Have you ever wondered why some doors are sealed forever, why entire cities vanish beneath the sea, or why ancient stones stand in ways we still can't explain? Welcome to Unearthed Secrets, the place where history's greatest mysteries are told slowly, softly, and with all their lingering wonder. Please subscribe to our channel, drop a like, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now, let's begin. The door that opens to no one. In the southern reaches of India, where the land folds into lush backwaters and the Arabian Sea breathes its tides against Kerala's coast, there stands a temple that has watched centuries pass as if they were fleeting moments. Its towers rise pale and intricate, coated in carvings of gods, sages, and celestial beings, each figure frozen mid-motion, yet alive in the gaze of those who stop to look. This is the Padmanabhaswamy Temple, a sanctuary of devotion, wealth, mystery, and silence. Within its sanctum, it honors Lord Vishnu, who reclines upon the serpent Ananta, resting eternally upon the cosmic waters. The deity's form, carved from black stone, stretches grandly, his expression serene, as though the weight of universes rests lightly upon him. Around him, the temple breathes. Pilgrims walk barefoot, their steps hushed against stone, polished by countless generations. The smell of sandalwood drifts through the corridors, curling with the threads of incense smoke that twist upward like whispers made visible. Priests chant in voices that echo off stone walls, the rhythm of their words rising and falling like the tide, ancient syllables shaping the air with sound, older than memory. Brass lamps glow in the half-light, their flames mirrored on polished floors, casting tremors of gold against stone columns, etched with scripture. But beneath this surface of worship lies something else, something older, deeper, and more silent than the chants. Hidden below the temple floors, there are vaults. They are not the sort of chambers one stumbles upon by accident. They are sealed by design, locked away by intention, meant to resist both time and curiosity. For centuries, they were known but untouched, their contents spoken of only in legend, their doors left to their silence. In 2011, however, that silence was disturbed. By order of India's Supreme Court, the vaults were to be opened and inventoried, their treasures documented, their existence acknowledged at last. One by one, the locks were undone, iron bars gave way, heavy doors groaned open. What emerged was beyond belief. Within, gold glittered not in coins alone, but in statues of gods and guardians, their forms shining even in the dim light. Necklaces of immense length lay coiled like sleeping serpents, each bead a gem larger than the eye could fully comprehend. Crowns inlaid with rubies, emeralds, and sapphires shimmered faintly, as though still yearning for the foreheads of forgotten kings. There were sacks heavy with diamonds, each stone reflecting countless rays of lamplight, making the dark rooms shimmer as though filled with stars. Offerings gathered over centuries, gifts from rulers and pilgrims alike, had swelled into hoards beyond calculation. Yet not every vault yielded. Among them was one unlike the rest, Vault B. This vault resisted not only physical entry, but understanding itself. Where others bore locks and chains that human hands could undo, Vault B bore something different. Its door was immense, a slab of iron and mystery, carved with serpentine figures, cobras etched in relief, their hoods flared as though in eternal warning. There was no handle to grasp, no visible hinge to loosen. The priests who had tended the temple for generations spoke of this vault in hushed tones. It was bound, they said, not by locks alone, but by a seal of mantra, a nagabandham, a mystical serpent bond, woven by sages long ago. To break it was not merely to enter a chamber, but to undo a knot, tied by forces beyond human reckoning. Only a ritual, a perfect and ancient one, could ever release it. A chant known as the Garuda mantra, recited without error by a priest whose devotion was spotless, whose austerity stretched unbroken across years. And even then, there were whispers that the attempt might unleash calamity. For the guardians of Vault B were not merely symbols carved in stone, but forces that still watched, still waited, still coiled unseen. The priests warned, do not attempt to open it, for behind that door treasure may glitter, but something more also sleeps, and so it became the door that opens to no one. Imagine descending into those depths. The temple above you hums with life. The bells ring at dusk, the chants echo at dawn, the air is filled with flowers and flame. Yet as you step down, the light grows dimmer, the stone cools beneath your feet, and silence thickens. The corridors narrow, shadows stretch long, and then before you, the door appears. Its surface is dark, massive, its engravings of cobras seeming almost alive in the flicker of oil lamps. You feel its weight not only as iron, but as presence. It does not invite, it does not explain, it simply exists, silent and immovable, an unanswered riddle in stone. What lies beyond it, no one knows. Some say mountains of gold still untouched, surpassing even the unimaginable wealth already revealed. Others whisper of objects not meant for human eyes, divine weapons, capable of destruction far beyond comprehension. Still others believe it hides scriptures, knowledge forbidden, truths too dangerous for the world, and there are those who think it holds not treasure but guardians, serpents in numbers uncountable, or forces intangible yet devastating if awakened. The legends multiply, as they always do when silence refuses to answer. History itself offers hints but no clarity. The Travancore dynasty, rulers of this land, long considered themselves mere servants of Vishnu, not kings but guardians of the god's wealth. In 1750, Maharaja Marthanda Varma dedicated his entire kingdom to Lord Padmanabhaswamy, declaring himself Padmanabhadasa, the servant of the deity. From then on, the temple was not just a place of worship, but the very throne of power. Offerings poured in, decade after decade, century upon century, until the vaults swelled with riches that were never to be used, never to be diminished, only kept in the name of the divine. Perhaps Vault B is the culmination of this guardianship. A chamber sealed for eternity, not to be opened even by kings. Its contents meant not for mortals but for the god himself. Even now, in the modern age, curiosity burns. Historians and archaeologists speculate endlessly. Could it contain relics that reshape what we know of history? Could it hold evidence of forgotten dynasties, alliances, or rituals? Could it be a library, a treasury, or something beyond categorization? Theories abound, but none draw closer to truth, because the door remains as it always has, sealed. The priests hold firm. They insist that attempts to open it would bring ruin, that the Nagabandham cannot be undone without consequence. In their words, the vault is not locked against humanity, but humanity is locked away from it, shielded from what lies beyond for its own protection. And so it waits, untouched, while the world speculates endlessly. Outside, life continues. The streets of Thiruvananthapuram bustle with cars and vendors, students and families. The temple still rises white and gold in the sun, its gopuram filled with carvings gazed upon daily by thousands. Inside, pilgrims still bow, priests still chant, bells still ring. Yet below all this, in a silence deeper than sound, the door rests, unchanged. It is said that the true test of mystery is not whether it can be solved, but whether it can endure unsolved. The door that opens to no one endures. It resists curiosity, not by violence but by patience. It waits, as it has always waited, as though time itself were nothing to it. Night falls on Kerala. The temple lamps are lit, their flames trembling in the evening air. The chants rise again, ancient words filling the sky. In that sound, in that devotion, the temple lives, as it has for centuries. And beneath it all, silent and sealed, the door remains. Perhaps it holds treasure, perhaps danger, perhaps nothing at all. But what it truly holds is something rarer. The reminder that not all doors are meant to open, and not all mysteries are meant to yield. The door that opens to no one. The city that rose from the sea. Far to the west of India, where the land dips into the waters of the Arabian Sea, the waves move with a rhythm that is older than memory. The coast of Gujarat glimmers in the sun, where salt flats stretch wide, and fishing boats bob gently at anchor. At first glance, nothing seems unusual about these shores. Fishermen cast their nets, children play by the water, and temples rise in sandstone and marble, their spires reaching upward toward the sky. Yet beneath these waters lies a story whispered in both legend and archaeology. A story of a city said to have vanished into the sea, and in the last century revealed itself again. Dwarka, the city that rose from the sea. The tale begins in myth, as many Indian stories do. In the Mahabharata, one of the great epics of the world, there is mention of a city unlike any other, built by Lord Krishna himself. Dwarka was said to be a city of golden palaces, wide avenues, and splendid gardens. It shone so brightly that even the gods looked upon it with wonder. Its walls were fortified, its gates strong, its towers shimmering with precious stones. Ships arrived at its harbors bearing goods from across the known world. Music filled its courtyards, festivals adorned its streets, and the presence of Krishna made it holy beyond compare. But all golden things are fleeting. The epic tells us that after the war of Kurukshetra, after Krishna's life on earth neared its end, a curse fell upon Dwarka. The sea, eternal and patient, rose slowly, steadily, until it swallowed the city whole. Walls vanished beneath the waves, palaces disappeared into silence, and what once glittered with life became a drowned memory. In the story, Dwarka sank, never to return. For centuries this was taken as myth, a tale sung by priests, told by storytellers, inscribed in manuscripts. Pilgrims came to the Dwarkadish temple, built later on the coast, believing it marked the place where Krishna had lived. Yet no one truly thought a city lay beneath the sea. Myths, after all, are not usually expected to step into daylight. And yet, in the 20th century, whispers began to stir again. Fishermen reported unusual shapes on the seabed. Walls, steps, structures where no natural rock should be. Divers spoke of stone blocks aligned too precisely to be mere chance. And so archaeologists began to look, to search beneath the waves, off the coast of modern Dwarka. What they found was astonishing. Beneath the shifting waters, beneath the sands of the seabed, were structures, walls stretching long, streets paved in patterns, foundations that hinted at temples, dwellings, fortifications. Stone blocks chiseled by human hands, now encrusted with coral, but unmistakable in their intention. Pottery shards, tools and inscriptions emerged from the depths, each one speaking faintly of a civilization long gone. The sea had kept its silence for thousands of years, but now it revealed fragments, pieces of a city thought lost to time. The scale of the discovery was immense. Here was a settlement, stretching over kilometers, its boundaries blurred by the shifting tides, but clear enough to see that it had once been planned, structured, alive, streets aligned in grid patterns, wells cut deep into stone, platforms for what might have been houses or temples. Some structures hinted at harbors, docks for ships, suggesting a thriving port city, open to trade across the Arabian Sea. And suddenly, the myth no longer felt distant. Suddenly, the Mahabharata's words of palaces, of harbors, of a city swallowed by the sea, felt like echoes of memory rather than invention. Could it be that Dwarka, Krishna's city, had truly stood here, on this very coast, before slipping beneath the waters thousands of years ago? The discovery sparked endless questions. How old was this city? Some findings suggested it might date back as far as 9,000 years, to an age when other great civilizations were only beginning to stir. Others argued for a later date, closer to 3,500 years ago, in line with the epic's chronology. The debates grew fierce, yet the evidence remained. Stone where no stone should be, walls where only sand was expected. The sea is a careful keeper of secrets. Walking along the modern coast of Dwarka, one sees the temple rising tall, its spire crowned with a flag that flutters ceaselessly in the ocean wind. Pilgrims enter its sanctum, bowing before Krishna, their voices rising in hymns as conch shells sound. From the temple steps, one can look out over the restless waters, shimmering with light, and know that beneath those waves, another Dwarka rests. Silent, drowned, but not gone. Imagine yourself descending into those waters. The surface ripples above you, light refracts in wavering bands, and silence deepens with every step downward. Fish dart past, their scales flashing like fragments of memory. And then, through the dimness, shapes emerge. Blocks of stone too regular for chance, steps carved into rock, now worn smooth by centuries of tide. A wall stretching into the distance, broken but unmistakably human in its form. You swim closer, your hands brushing across grooves once cut by tools, across surfaces once walked upon by people long forgotten. You are in a city beneath the sea, a city that should not exist, and yet does. The artifacts pulled from these waters tell their own story. Pottery etched with designs, beads crafted from stones far from Gujarat, evidence of trade that stretched across distant lands, copper objects, tools shaped with precision, ornaments that speak of both artistry and wealth. Each piece is small, fragile, yet together they weave a tapestry of life. People who lived, traded, worshipped, built, and then vanished, leaving only these remnants behind. The question remains, was this truly Krishna's Dwarka, or was it another city, a real one, later woven into legend? Perhaps the two are not separate. Perhaps the memory of a real city, drowned long ago, lived on in stories until it became inseparable from myth. After all, legends are not always inventions. Sometimes, they are echoes of truths carried across generations. What is undeniable is the feeling that lingers over Dwarka. Standing on its shores at dusk, when the sun dips into the horizon and the temple bells ring out, one feels the weight of time pressing close. The waves crash as they always have, patient and ceaseless. The city below remains unseen, but its presence is felt. The fishermen still speak of shapes glimpsed beneath the water. The divers still tell of walls vanishing into the sand, and the epic still whispers of a city of gold, cursed to sink, yet never fully lost. The sea gives, and the sea takes. Dwarka is proof of both. Night falls upon Gujarat. The temple lamps are lit, their flames flickering against stone walls. The sound of conch shells echoes into the dark, carrying words of devotion into the sky. And out there, beneath the rolling waves, the city sleeps still, its silence unbroken, its mystery intact. A city that rose from the sea, vanished, and rose again in whispers, in stone, in story. Dwarka, the city of myth, the city of memory, the city of the sea. The stones that defy gravity. High in the sacred valley of Peru, between ridges that cut into the heavens and rivers that whisper their way through stone, there lies a place where time itself seems to pause. It is a valley where the air is thin, crisp, alive with the voices of wind that sweep down from the mountains, and where clouds linger low, dragging their shadows across green terraces that have clung to the slopes for centuries. And upon these slopes, carved into the mountainside, As though the earth itself yielded to the will of human hands, stands Ollantaytambo, a site where stone has been transformed into something beyond stone, where walls rise in silence and seem to defy not only time, but the very pull of gravity. The name itself carries a weight. Ollantaytambo, syllables that echo with the sound of Quechua, the language of the Inca, a language that still drifts in the air of the valley. To speak it is to feel a rhythm older than conquest, older than the walls themselves, but to see the place is to understand why words falter. The terraces grip the mountainside like the steps of some vast stairway to the sky, while above them loom walls made not of small stones fitted with mortar, but of immense blocks, each one shaped, carved, and locked into place with such precision that centuries of earthquakes have failed to shake them loose. The walls of Ollantaytambo are not simply built, they are composed like music, each stone set against another with a care that seems almost obsessive, the lines between them so precise that even the thinnest blade cannot slip through. These stones, some larger than small houses, rest against one another without the aid of mortar, yet they do not fall. They lean, they lock, they support. They create a harmony of weight and balance that has lasted through centuries of storms, through the trembling of the earth, through the fall of empires. From a distance, Ollantaytambo might be mistaken for a fortress, a military stronghold designed to guard the sacred valley. Indeed, in later years it would serve such a purpose. But as you approach, as you walk the worn steps and touch the stones themselves, you sense that this was more than defense, more than mere architecture. It was vision, it was reverence. It was an expression of mastery so profound that it borders on the incomprehensible. To stand before these walls is to confront a question that has lingered for centuries. How? How did people without iron tools, without wheels, without beasts of burden capable of pulling such weight, manage to quarry stones from distant mountains, drag them across rivers, up slopes, and set them in place with a precision that modern engineers still marvel at? The stones weigh not in hundreds of pounds but in tons. 50, 60, even more. Some stand upright, as if they were pillars, others lie across the top, lintels to doorways that seem carved for giants. The work is not crude but delicate, almost tender, the kind of care that suggests more than construction, it suggests communion. Legends still swirl among the Andean people about how such walls were made. Some say the stones moved themselves, softened by ritual songs, gliding into place under the direction of priests who knew the secret language of the earth. Others whisper that the builders harnessed the breath of the mountains, the energy of the land itself, to lighten the burden, to bend stone to their will. Still others believe the stones are older than the Inca, remnants of a civilization lost to time, a civilization whose knowledge has vanished like mist at dawn. Yet beyond speculation, the walls simply remain. They do not answer, they do not explain. They only stand, silent, indifferent, their presence alone commanding awe. When the sun rises over Ollantaytambo, its light strikes the stones in such a way that they seem to glow, their faces catching the warmth of the day. Shadows fall between their seams, sharp and exact, as if traced by hand. The terraces below stretch out like green carpets, each one flat and ready for crops, the kind of careful agriculture that fed empires. And when night falls, the stars appear above with a clarity unknown to lower lands, each constellation sharp against the darkness. To the Inca, these constellations were not only guides for travel and timekeeping, but living beings, animals and spirits that watched over them. The walls of Ollantaytambo were not separate from this celestial order, they were part of it. Some believe they align with stars, with solstices, with the rhythms of the sky. To stand among them at night is to feel as though the heavens themselves lean closer, drawn down to meet the precision of stone. But Ollantaytambo is not only stones and walls, it is memory layered upon memory. It was once the royal estate of the Inca Emperor Pachacuti, the visionary ruler who expanded the empire across mountains and valleys. To him, Ollantaytambo was both retreat and statement, a place of ceremony, a display of power, a symbol carved into the mountainside itself. Here festivals would have unfolded, with music echoing across the terraces, with offerings laid at altars, with firelight flickering against stone. The air would have been filled with the scent of burning herbs, with the sound of flutes and drums, with the murmur of prayers to the earth, the sky, and the spirits that inhabit both. Imagine walking the terraces during such a festival. The steps are wide, each terrace flat and planted, the crops rippling in the breeze like green oceans. People move in procession, carrying offerings, their clothes bright with woven patterns, their voices rising in chant. At the top, before the great walls, priests stand, their headdresses catching the sun, their hands lifting bowls of maize beer, of coca leaves, of chicha poured to honor Pachamama, the Mother Earth. And behind them, the walls stand as backdrops, silent witnesses to the prayers, the songs, the flames. Centuries later, Ollantaytambo would become a fortress in truth. When the Spanish came, bringing horses, steel, and fire, the Inca retreated here under the leadership of Manco Inca. From these terraces they fought back, rolling stones down upon the invaders, flooding the valley below, forcing the Spaniards to retreat. For a brief moment, Ollantaytambo stood not only as a symbol of Inca power, but as its defender. The stones that had defied gravity now defied conquest. But the moment was fleeting. The empire crumbled. The Spanish returned. And though Ollantaytambo remained, its walls unbroken, the people who had built it were scattered, their knowledge fading into legend. Yet the stones endured. They endure still. Earthquakes have shaken the sacred valley countless times, toppling villages, splitting ground, yet the walls remain. Their secret lies in their very shape, not rectangles stacked like bricks, but irregular polygons fitted like pieces of a puzzle, each stone pressing against the others, distributing force, absorbing shock. They were designed not only for beauty but for survival, and in their survival they embody a kind of wisdom, a way of building that understands the earth not as enemy but as partner. Walk the paths today, and you will see more than walls. You will see doorways carved with lintels too large to imagine lifting. You will see niches cut into stone, perhaps once for idols, perhaps for offerings. You will see unfinished stones still lying in the valley, half-shaped, abandoned when the empire fell, as if frozen mid-breath. You will see the quarry across the Urubamba River, where stones were pried from the mountain, where channels cut into rock show the marks of work paused centuries ago. And you will wonder how they planned to move those immense blocks, how they managed to move the ones that now stand before you. Legends say the stones were carried by lines of workers, thousands strong, dragging them with ropes, lubricating the ground with water, with sand, inch by inch. Others suggest they built ramps, long earthen slopes that wound across the valley, up which the stones could be hauled. The truth may never be known, and perhaps that is fitting, for the stones themselves seem to resist explanation. They stand, they endure, they invite wonder. That is enough. At night, when the tourists have left and silence settles over the valley, Ollantaytambo becomes something else. The wind moves between the stones with a voice like whispers. The stars shimmer overhead, reflected faintly in the river below. The walls seem taller, darker, their seams vanishing into shadow until they appear as single masses, monoliths rising from the earth. To walk among them in the quiet is to feel watched, not in fear but in reverence, as though the stones themselves are aware, as though they carry memory within them, memory too vast to be spoken. The Andes are a land of myth, and Ollantaytambo is steeped in it. The mountains themselves are a pus, sacred beings, guardians of the people. The river is alive, carrying the voice of the land. The stones too are alive, not dead matter, but entities with spirit, with will. To place them, to shape them, was not simply work but dialogue, negotiation, offering. The walls are not only human achievement, but collaboration between people and earth, between will and weight, between vision and stone. Centuries have passed since the empire fell. The world beyond the sacred valley has changed beyond recognition, yet in Ollantaytambo, the stones remain as they were. Farmers still work the terraces below, planting maize, potatoes, quinoa, their lives not so different from those of ancestors. Children still run along the paths, the river still flows, the mountains still rise, and above them all the walls stand, vast and silent, defying gravity, defying time, defying the certainty of explanation. To see them is to feel small, but not diminished. Rather, it is to feel part of something larger, to sense that human hands once reached out to the impossible and achieved it, not by conquering the earth but by listening to it, shaping it, respecting it. The stones that defy gravity are not only wonders of engineering, but lessons carved in silence. They remind us that the greatest mysteries are not those we solve but those we live alongside, those that remain, those that endure. And so Ollantaytambo rests in the sacred valley. Its stones patient, its terraces green, its walls unbroken. The sun will rise again, casting its light upon their faces. The shadows will fall, sharp and clean. The stars will return, wheeling overhead in their eternal rhythm. And through it all the stones will stand, unmoving, unyielding, unanswering, but ever present. They will wait, as they have always waited, as they will always wait, for the footsteps of those who come to wonder, to question, to touch the surface of the impossible. For they are the stones that defy gravity, and they belong not only to the past but to eternity. The gate to the afterlife. In the ancient heart of Mesopotamia, where two great rivers carried life across a land of clay and reeds, there once stood a city whose name still lingers in the echoes of history. Babylon, a place both real and legendary, where kings built towers that reached toward the heavens, and where myths grew into truths too vast to measure. Amid its walls and temples, among the gardens and palaces that made the city shine like no other, there was a gate so immense, so luminous, that it seemed less an entrance than a threshold to another realm. The Ishtar Gate, they called it, a door that opened not only into Babylon, but into eternity itself. To imagine it is to step back nearly 3,000 years into a city alive with sound and color. The air is heavy with the scent of incense and the dust of sun-baked streets. Merchants call out in markets where spices from far lands mix with the aroma of bread baking in clay ovens. Priests chant in the shadow of ziggurats, their voices rising toward the sky, and looming above it all, shimmering in the light of the Mesopotamian sun, is the gate. Its walls are not the dull gray of unadorned stone, but radiant with glazed bricks of deep, rich blue. A blue so vivid it seems almost liquid, as if the sky itself had been pressed into clay. Upon this background dance figures of lions, dragons, and bulls, their bodies crafted in relief, their forms gleaming with golden tones. They stride endlessly across the surface, guardians of the threshold, protectors of the sacred. Each one is shaped with care, its muscles defined, its posture proud, a living symbol of divine power. The gate was built in the time of Nebuchadnezzar II, the great king who sought to make Babylon not only the mightiest city of his age, but a city that would echo through all ages. He ordered the walls rebuilt, the temples restored, the palaces expanded, and at the northern entrance, where processions would pass, he commanded the construction of a gate, so magnificent that it would declare Babylon's power before one even set foot inside. The Ishtar Gate was that declaration, a vision in brick and glaze that announced to all, here lies the heart of an empire. But it was more than display, it was devotion. The gate was dedicated to Ishtar, goddess of love and war, of fertility and fate, she who was both tender and fierce. Her lions strode across the bricks, their mouths open in eternal roar, their bodies lean with divine strength. Alongside them moved the Mushkushu, dragon serpents with scaled bodies, horns, and serpent tails, creatures sacred to Marduk, the great god of Babylon. And with them too, the bulls of Adad, storm god, their bodies thick with power. Together they formed a procession of divine guardians, an army of eternal protectors carved into the very walls of the gate. To pass beneath their gaze was not merely to enter a city, but to cross into sacred space, into the order upheld by gods and king alike. The processional way stretched before the gate, paved with slabs of limestone, its walls lined with yet more lions, over 100 of them striding proudly. During festivals, this path would come alive with movement, with music, with offerings carried high. The most sacred of these was the New Year festival, when statues of the gods were carried in grand procession along the way, through the Ishtar Gate, into the temple of Marduk. People gathered in crowds, their voices rising in prayer, their eyes lifted to the glittering surface of the gate, knowing that they stood in the presence of something more than human. For in Babylon, the boundary between mortal and divine was thin. The ziggurat stretched upward, a ladder between earth and sky. The temples stood as houses of the gods. And the gate was the threshold. To pass through it was to step into a space where human and divine overlapped. To the people who approached, weary travelers from distant lands, soldiers returning from campaign, pilgrims carrying offerings, the Ishtar Gate must have seemed less a doorway to a city than a doorway to the afterlife, to realms unseen, to powers eternal. The craftsmanship alone was astonishing. The bricks, each one molded from clay of the Euphrates, were glazed with minerals that created their vibrant hues, blue for the heavens, white and yellow for the beasts. Fired in kilns they emerged shining, then were set in place one by one, forming patterns too vast to take in all at once. Inscribed upon them were words of the king, declaring his devotion, his power, his role as chosen of the gods. The entire structure rose over 40 feet high, its arch framed with towers, its bulk dominating the skyline. It was a wonder not only of Babylon but of the world. Yet Babylon itself was a city of wonders. The hanging gardens, whether myth or memory, were said to have graced its walls. The Tower of Babel, remembered in scripture, was its ziggurat, Etamananki, a stairway for the gods. And within this city of marvels, the Ishtar Gate was the crown of the walls, the brilliance that greeted all who came. Imagine approaching it at dusk, when the sun's light turns soft and the sky deepens. The blue bricks glow with a cooler radiance, the beasts upon them casting long shadows. Torches flicker along the processional way, their light dancing across the glazed surfaces, making the lions appear to move, the dragons to slither, the bulls to step forward. The sound of drums rises, slow and steady, heartbeat of the city, and as you draw near, the gate towers over you, immense, unyielding, yet alive with divine presence. You feel small, but not diminished. Rather, you feel as though you are about to enter a story greater than your own, a story that stretches into eternity. The gate stood for centuries, a sentinel of Babylon, a symbol of its power and faith. But time, relentless as always, moved forward. Empires rose and fell. Armies came and went. Babylon, once the jewel of Mesopotamia, faded. Its bricks crumbled, its gardens withered, its ziggurat toppled. The Ishtar Gate, too, sank into ruin, buried by sand and silence. For centuries it lay hidden, its brilliance forgotten, its lions and dragons slumbering beneath the earth. It was not until the early 20th century that it was uncovered, its fragments unearthed by archaeologists who carried them far away, across continents, to be reassembled in Berlin. There, within the Pergamon Museum, the gate once again rises, not entire, but enough to awe. Its blue bricks gleam still, its lions stride still, its dragons coil still. Visitors walk before it in hushed voices, their eyes wide, sensing something that words cannot quite hold. For though it has been displaced, though the city it once guarded lies in ruin, the gate itself still carries its aura. It still feels less like an artifact, and more like a threshold, a gate to something beyond. Perhaps that is why it endures in memory. Not only as architecture, not only as history, but as symbol. The Ishtar Gate reminds us that humanity has always sought to create thresholds to the divine, to build places where earth and heaven meet, where life and afterlife touch. It is one of many: Stonehenge, the pyramids, the cathedrals. Yet it is unique in its brilliance, in its color, in the way it seems not built but conjured. Stand before it, whether in Berlin or in the ruins of Babylon, and you will feel it. The hush of reverence, the weight of time, the sense that you are not simply looking at bricks but at a passage. You are standing before a gate, and gates are never only entrances. They are symbols of transition, of movement, of leaving one world and stepping into another. The Ishtar Gate was, and remains, exactly that. And so it is remembered, not merely as a city gate, but as a gate to the afterlife. A place where the mortal ended and the eternal began. A place where lions roared in silence, where dragons coiled without moving, where bulls stood watch without rest. A place where the goddess Ishtar herself was honored, where the people passed in procession, where the living touched the shadow of the divine. The gate to the afterlife. The Ishtar Gate. A threshold carved in blue, luminous in memory, patient in ruin, eternal in meaning. It stands still, not only in brick and glaze, but in the imagination, a reminder that the journey of humanity has always led us to build gates, and that beyond each gate lies the unknown, waiting, watching, silent, eternal. The tomb, hidden in a cliff. The cliffs of western Thebes rise like frozen waves above the desert plain, a labyrinth of ridges and pale stone cut by wind, time, and silence. At first glance, they appear empty, unmarked, as if nature alone shaped them. But within these cliffs, carved into their very heart, lies a hidden world, the Valley of the Kings, a necropolis of secret passageways, of painted halls deep underground, where pharaohs sought eternal life in tombs disguised by rock. Among these, one tomb whispers more than others, concealed in the cliff face as though the mountain itself tried to guard it. A door sealed by sand, a passage descending into darkness, chambers painted with eternity. A tomb hidden in a cliff. When you walk toward the valley, the desert swallows you. There is no sound but the crunch of gravel underfoot. The sun presses down, and the limestone blazes white, sharp against the deep blue sky. The cliffs curve inward to form a natural amphitheater, a place the ancient Egyptians believed was sacred, shaped like the hieroglyph for horizon. In that horizon, the sun would set each evening, sinking into the underworld, only to rise again. To build tombs here was to align the pharaohs with the journey of the sun, promising rebirth after death. Yet the entrances were not meant to be seen. They were cut into sheer walls, plastered over, and concealed by rubble, as though the cliffs themselves devoured their dead kings. The tomb hidden in a cliff begins not with grandeur but with silence. A narrow fissure in the rock, widened by human hands. Ancient workers, chisels echoing against limestone, lowered themselves into the earth. Day after day, year after year, carving staircases, corridors, and chambers. The deeper they went, the cooler the air became, until torches flickered in pitch blackness. Here, away from the sun, pharaohs would lie in eternal night, surrounded by texts and images meant to guide them across the perilous underworld. Imagine standing before such a hidden door. At first glance, it is nothing. A slab of stone blending with the cliff. But a careful hand brushes away dust, revealing the faint outline of a sealed entrance. The Egyptians closed tombs with blocks of limestone, fitted flush, then plastered and painted to vanish into the cliff face. Only those who knew where to look could find them again. Yet time and shifting sands sometimes betrayed their location. Thieves searched, priests rediscovered, archaeologists later stumbled upon clues. Every tomb here has its story of concealment and rediscovery, as if each resisted being unearthed. Inside, the corridors stretch long and sloping, descending deeper into silence. The walls come alive with color, still brilliant after millennia, reds, blues, golds, blacks forming images of gods, demons, and the pharaoh himself. In one chamber, Ra the sun god sails his bark through night waters. In another, Anubis, jackal-headed, bends over a mummy, performing the rites of embalming. The walls are more than art, they are spells, Words from the Book of the Dead, the Book of Gates, and the Amduat, the guides of the afterlife, unfold in painted hieroglyphs. To walk down these corridors is to journey alongside a soul on its passage to eternity. The tomb hidden in a cliff might be imagined as belonging to a pharaoh who feared both time and theft. Perhaps he ordered his resting place carved deeper, away from prying eyes. Perhaps he demanded layers of deception, false passages, blocked doors, unfinished tunnels to confuse intruders. And so his tomb lies invisible, high in the valley wall, a doorway few would suspect. To reach it, one must climb where loose stones slide beneath your feet, and shadows stretch long against the rock. The entrance gapes like a wound in the stone, and beyond it, cool air drifts upward, smelling faintly of dust and time. The descent is slow, steps cut into limestone drop in careful rhythm, torchlight painting the walls with trembling shapes. The silence is heavy, as though even sound is reluctant to disturb the pharaoh's sleep. The deeper you go, the more the air presses in, until it feels as if the mountain itself is closing around you. Then at last, a chamber opens, vast. Columns carved to resemble bundles of papyrus rise toward a ceiling painted with stars. The stars shimmer in gold, a night sky brought underground, eternal and unchanging. The pharaoh lies here in his sarcophagus, a massive stone vessel carved with protective spells. Around him treasures once gleamed, gold, alabaster, phaenis, chariots, statues, all offerings to sustain his rebirth. Many may be gone, stolen long ago, but the walls remain, and the silence remains. The tomb hidden in a cliff still holds its pharaoh in the embrace of eternity, but each tomb tells more than one story. Workers carved them, priests sealed them, robbers broke them, explorers uncovered them. In every age, the hidden tombs were rediscovered and reinterpreted. Some were found empty, stripped bare by ancient thieves who tunneled through ceilings or hacked through sealed doors. Others still contained fragments of burial goods, broken but telling of lost splendor. A few, like Tutankhamun's, escaped major plunder and dazzled the modern world with their treasures. Yet all, even those empty, hold a power. To step inside is to walk into time itself, to stand where the living once stood in reverence of the dead. In the Valley of the Kings, tombs hide not only kings but stories of secrecy. Priests of the 21st dynasty once gathered the scattered mummies of earlier pharaohs, moving them from plundered tombs into hidden caches. They rewrapped them, labeled them, and concealed them in cliffs and shafts, trying to preserve what was being destroyed. For centuries, these caches lay untouched, until modern archaeologists uncovered bundles of royal mummies tucked away in forgotten corners of the cliffs. Even the dead were hidden within the hidden, a labyrinth of concealment. And so, the tomb hidden in a cliff is not merely stone and passage. It is a metaphor for memory itself, history concealed, revealed, and concealed again. Each tomb was intended to remain sealed forever, yet their very secrecy ensured curiosity. The mountain cannot resist whispering. Explorers of the 19th century climbed these cliffs with ropes and torches, mapping corridors, copying inscriptions, recording what had been sealed away. Some used blasting powder, others pried open stones with crowbars, disturbing the silence with violence. Yet still, the tombs endured, and still they whisper. In the stillness, you can imagine the funerary procession that once wound its way into the valley. Priests chanting, incense burning, mourners weeping, the golden coffin carried slowly toward its hidden door, the sun beating down, the cliffs looming above, the air thick with sorrow and reverence. The coffin would descend, step by step, into the cool dark, surrounded by offerings and lighted by flickering torches. Then, as the rituals ended, the door would be sealed, the rubble piled high, and silence would fall. Outside, the world continued, wars, floods, dynasties rising and falling. But inside, the tomb remained unchanged, a secret chamber of eternity. What is it about a tomb hidden in a cliff that draws us so deeply? Perhaps it is the paradox, a place meant to last forever, yet concealed so completely it might never be seen again. A monument not to display but to hide, yet hiding does not erase existence. The cliffs hold memory like stone vessels, waiting until the right moment, or the right hands, uncover them once more. To stand at such a tomb is to stand between two worlds. The world of the living who seek and wonder, and the world of the dead who wait and dream. The tomb hidden in a cliff rests still. Its walls hold stories of gods and kings, of journeys across darkness, of promises of rebirth. Its silence holds the weight of centuries. The desert wind sweeps past the valley, carrying dust across stone, erasing footsteps, covering entrances. Yet the tomb remains, unseen, waiting. A doorway cut into living rock, a passage into eternal night. The tomb hidden in a cliff whispers not to be disturbed, yet it calls all the same, its voice buried in the stone, timeless, patient, unbroken. The throne of forgotten kings. In the quiet heart of legend, where memory and stone mingle into one, there is said to have been a throne unlike any other, not carved simply as a seat, nor raised merely as a symbol of rule, but constructed as the embodiment of wisdom itself, gilded and alive with meaning, touched by myth, and whispered into existence by hands mortal and divine. They called it the Throne of Solomon, a chair that was more than a chair, a place where heaven and earth seemed to meet, where kingship was not simply declared but sanctified. Yet today, no fragment of it stands in certainty. No museum case protects it, no ruin reveals it, no excavation has recovered its stones or metals. It exists in memory, in scripture, in folk tales, in stories handed down across centuries, the throne of forgotten kings. To imagine it is to step into the vast halls of Solomon's Jerusalem, into a court where cedar beams and golden panels stretched high, where the air was heavy with incense, where music of harps and voices trembled in reverence, and where at the center stood a structure of awe. Ancient accounts tell of a throne made of ivory, overlaid with pure gold. 6 steps led upward toward it, flanked on either side by 12 lions, standing proud in pairs, each step guarded by the image of strength and vigilance. The seat itself shone with carvings of cherubim, of palm trees, of blossoming flowers, shimmering in gold leaf and silver detail. It was not just a throne, but a vision. To sit upon it was to sit between heaven's authority and the earth's submission. When the king ascended to that throne, he was no longer simply a man of flesh and breath. He became the living vessel of justice, the mouthpiece of divine command. The throne proclaimed his wisdom even before he spoke. Courtiers and visitors, emissaries from lands as distant as Sheba, Egypt, Babylon, and Tyre, would approach, and their eyes were caught first by its grandeur, its lions, its gilded steps, its shining seat, before they turned to the king himself. It was as though Solomon had been crowned anew each day he sat upon it. Legends grew around the throne. In some traditions, it was no ordinary work of human artisanship. It was said that craftsmen from many nations had gathered, Phoenician carvers skilled in cedar, Egyptian artisans learned in ivory, Israelite smiths trained in gold. Some whispered that angels themselves guided the work. Others claimed that Solomon commanded not only men but spirits, the jinn, to bring him the materials, to lift the massive panels, to shape the impossible detail. The throne became a fusion of human artistry and otherworldly power. Its very presence testified that Solomon was more than a king. He was a chosen vessel of wisdom, the one who could command the winds and the unseen. Step closer and imagine the surface of that throne. The lions of gold and ivory gleam, their manes detailed with curls of shining metal, their paws resting firmly, their eyes seeming almost alive in torchlight. The steps are smooth underfoot, polished ivory veined with faint lines, each slab a gift of distant lands. The armrests curl in shapes of winged cherubim, their wings folded inward, their faces serene. The back of the throne rises high, carved with palm branches and lotus flowers, symbols of life eternal. The entire seat glimmers, catching every flicker of flame, as though it radiates its own light, and the stories do not stop with its beauty. Some said the throne was alive with mechanism. Jewish, Persian, and Islamic traditions alike told tales of a throne that could move, could respond, could even challenge those unworthy to sit upon it. In certain legends, when Solomon approached, the lions and animals of the throne shifted, bowing their heads, extending their paws as steps, guiding him upward. The throne itself was said to rise or to spin, lifting the king until he sat at the pinnacle, elevated above the assembly. When false claimants or usurpers attempted to ascend, the animals of the throne lashed out, striking, preventing the unworthy from seating themselves. It was a throne not merely of gold, but of judgment. To sit upon the throne, then, was to enter into a covenant. Wisdom was demanded, justice was required. The stories of Solomon's judgments, splitting truth from lies, discerning good from evil, were told alongside the vision of the throne. It was impossible to separate the man from the seat, or the wisdom from the gold. The throne of forgotten kings became, in memory, a symbol of what it meant to rule with divine sanction, to embody a justice larger than oneself. But the throne, like all things of earth, did not last forever. After Solomon's reign, it was said to have passed to other rulers, to kings who lacked his wisdom. Some say it was carried away by foreign conquerors, perhaps to Babylon, perhaps to Egypt. Others believed it was dismantled, its pieces scattered, melted down, lost to time. Traditions from the Talmud to medieval Islamic chronicles tell of its journeys, how Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, once tried to sit upon it, only to be struck by its guardian lions. How Persian kings later coveted it, reassembled fragments of it, or forged imitations of it, yet none matched the original. None carried the same aura of sanctity. By degrees, the throne dissolved into myth, until all that remained was story. And yet, even as myth, the throne endures. For when people spoke of kingship, of forgotten empires, of the balance between power and justice, they spoke through the image of the throne. Thrones are never simply chairs, they are embodiments of order, of hierarchy, of the fragile weight of rule. But Solomon's throne was imagined as more than all others. It was the vision of a just king, given material form, a throne that judged as much as it supported, a seat alive with wisdom. That memory lingers in stone and scripture, in verse and tale, though the gold itself has vanished. Picture yourself wandering through a ruined hall, perhaps somewhere in Jerusalem, perhaps only in the imagination of legend. The air is cool, the ceiling high, the stones echoing with your every footstep. At the far end, where once the throne might have stood, there is now only an empty space. Dust gathers, sun slants through broken windows or vanished roofs, but the space itself seems to remember. Even without the throne you can feel its absence, as though something vast once stood here, something that shaped the very air. Imagine too the processions that once approached the throne, priests in linen, musicians with harps, soldiers with spears, emissaries bearing gifts of spices and gold and exotic animals, all eyes drawn to the shining steps. The lions gleam in the torchlight, the steps rise higher, the seat glows at the top. Solomon enters, robes flowing, crown glinting, and he mounts the steps. The animals bow, the court falls silent, and he sits. The throne accepts him. His words flow, calm and measured, filled with discernment. It is not only his voice that speaks, it is the throne itself, radiating the wisdom it was built to hold. And when he is gone, what then? The throne lingers in the memory of all who saw it. They tell their children, who tell theirs. The throne becomes not only an object but an idea, passed down, embroidered with detail, growing more magnificent with every retelling. Lions growl, cherubim spread wings, the steps glow brighter, the throne spins or levitates, angels descend, myth expands where history is silent, until the throne is no longer wood, ivory and gold, but a symbol of kingship itself, the unreachable ideal against which all future thrones are measured. Time passes, empires rise and fall, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, all sweep across the land. Each brings its own thrones, its own seats of power, its own claims of divine rule. Yet the memory of Solomon's throne lingers, whispered in the marketplaces, written in scrolls, sung in tales. Pilgrims and travelers recount it, chroniclers embroider it, artists sketch it in manuscripts. The throne becomes a symbol across cultures, invoked whenever kings wish to claim the aura of forgotten glory. But the throne itself is gone, hidden by time, swallowed by silence, remembered only in echoes. Even now, to speak of the throne of Solomon is to summon the image of an impossible seat, where lions bow and cherubim guard, where wisdom sits enthroned. The throne of forgotten kings does not rest in a museum. It cannot be measured or reconstructed with certainty. It is carved instead into the collective memory of human imagination, a throne made not of ivory and gold, but of story and longing. And so it remains, hidden in legend, radiant in silence, waiting in the folds of time. The throne of forgotten kings, the throne that once held wisdom itself. The serpent made of earth. There is a hill in the heart of Ohio where the earth itself has been shaped into a serpent. It does not coil in stone, nor slither in water, nor rattle with scales, but rises silently from the soil, a creature of earth and grass, its body stretched across the ridge like a frozen wave of green. From the air, its form reveals itself, undulating coils, a curling tail, a long body winding in great arcs, and at the end, a broad head with its mouth agape, poised as though to swallow an egg or to release it into the world. This is the Great Serpent Mound, one of the largest effigy earthworks on Earth. A mystery laid down centuries ago, by hands long vanished, a serpent sculpted not from stone, but from the living ground itself. Approach it by foot, and the serpent is not immediately clear. At first you see only grassy ridges, low embankments rolling across the hilltop. The forest presses in on either side, and the birds call overhead. The earth seems to ripple under the open sky. But climb higher, or stand at a distance, and the shape emerges, the unmistakable outline of a serpent, curling and winding, 1,300 feet long, its body narrowing and widening, its head distinct from its coils. It lies upon a plateau above a winding creek, as if guarding the waters below, as if keeping vigil across the valley. The people who built it are lost to time. Some say it was the Edina, more than 2,000 years ago. Others claim the Hopewell, masters of earthworks, laid it down between 100 BCE and 500 CE. Still others believe it was the Fort Ancient Culture, around 1000 CE, aligning it with the sky and the movements of the sun. Each generation of archaeologists and storytellers has added a layer of possibility, but none has spoken the final truth. The serpent refuses certainty. It lies silent, its mouth open, its egg or sun or world held before it, as if reminding us that answers are always just beyond our grasp. Imagine the labor it took, generations of hands carrying baskets of earth, piling, shaping, smoothing. walking along the ridge again and again, aligning curves to stars, to solstices, to eclipses. The soil was dug from nearby pits, carried, tamped, layered, so that the serpent rose higher and clearer against the grass. They would have watched the sky as they worked, watching where the sun set on the solstice, where the moon rose, where the stars wheeled. The serpent is not merely a figure on the ground, it is a map, a calendar, a story written into the land itself. At its head, the serpent's mouth opens toward a broad oval. Some call it an egg, a symbol of creation, life emerging from the void. Others see the sun, caught at the moment of eclipse, devoured by the serpent's jaws. Some say it is the moon, or the world itself, or the eternal cycle of destruction and renewal. The coils of the body bend with precision. The first curve aligns with the summer solstice sunset, another with the winter solstice sunrise. The serpent seems to swallow and release the sun, holding time within its body. It is both creature and calendar, symbol and cosmos. The serpent as symbol is ancient, stretching across cultures. To some peoples, it is the guardian of the underworld, dwelling in rivers and caves, coiled at the roots of the earth. To others, it is renewal itself, shedding its skin, eternal and cyclical. In some traditions, the serpent swallows the sun during eclipses, only to release it again. In others, it coils around the world, binding creation together. The builders of the Great Serpent Mound may have held such meanings, or others now forgotten, stories lost with their voices. But the earth remembers, the serpent remains. Stand upon its head, and you feel the rise of the land, the view opening across the valley. The wind moves softly, carrying scents of grass and forest. The serpent's mouth spreads wide before you, the oval space clear and deliberate. Step back along its body, and the ground rises and falls with each coil. It is like walking upon the spine of a giant creature sleeping beneath the soil. Each curve carries you closer to its tail, a triple spiral curling tightly, mysterious in its form. Some see the spiral as the cycle of life, others as the movement of the cosmos, others as a riddle beyond our knowing. Night falls, and the serpent takes on another life. The stars emerge overhead, a vast river of light across the black sky. The serpent's coils align with them, mirroring constellations, echoing the Milky Way. The oval at its head seems to hold the moon, pale and luminous, drifting across the sky. In the quiet, the serpent seems to breathe, its body rising in shadow, its coils glimmering faintly with dew. To stand there at night is to feel both very small and deeply connected, as though the serpent binds earth and sky together, holding the universe in its long, silent body. The Serpent Mound was not built alone. Across the Ohio Valley, ancient peoples shaped the earth into vast enclosures, circles, octagons, effigies of birds and animals. These were not mere monuments, they were maps, calendars, places of ceremony, places where sky and earth met. The Great Serpent Mound is the most mysterious of all, the one that resists final explanation. No burials lie within it, no treasures are hidden under its coils. It is pure form, pure symbol, an act of shaping the earth into meaning. When Europeans first saw it in the 19th century, they marveled. Some thought it was built by a lost race, by peoples unknown to the land. They could not imagine that the ancestors of the indigenous peoples they saw around them had raised such a work. But time has corrected such arrogance. We now know that the peoples of ancient America were master builders, astronomers, artisans of earth and sky. The serpent is their voice across centuries, speaking without words, holding truths in its silent curves. Walk again along the mound. The grass brushes your legs, the ground rises and falls. Insects hum, the air is warm or cool depending on the season, and always the serpent winds ahead of you. You place your feet where countless others once walked, builders, priests, families, travelers. Each curve feels intentional, each rise deliberate. The serpent does not rush, it stretches, it coils, it watches. The earth is patient, the serpent's body will outlast generations. There are stories that the serpent guards something. Some say it protects the land itself, coiled over a source of power. Others whisper that it is a boundary, marking the passage between worlds, the place where the living meet the spirits. Some believe it is a compass, pointing toward distant sacred places. Whatever the truth, the serpent endures, silent but never still, a living shape of earth. As centuries pass, grass grows, storms erode, roots press through soil, yet the serpent remains. Archaeologists study it, caretakers preserve it, visitors walk it, but none can claim to fully know it. It belongs to time, to the sky, to the people who shaped it, and the land that holds it. It is a serpent of earth, a creature larger than imagination, lying quiet beneath the sun and stars. In the end, the Great Serpent Mound is less about answers than about presence. It does not tell us plainly why it was built, or what it means. It invites us instead to walk, to look, to feel, to wonder. It invites us to place ourselves in the long river of time, to see the sun set and rise, to see the stars wheel, to know that we are part of something vast and enduring. The The serpent does not speak, yet it tells everything. The serpent is the land itself, remembering, and so the serpent lies, coiled upon the hill, mouth open to the sky, body winding in eternal rhythm. It waits for the sun, for the moon, for the stars, for the feet of wanderers, for the gaze of dreamers. It waits, as it has always waited, a serpent made of earth, a memory of those who came before, a mystery for those who come after. It waits, and it endures, a story written in the soil, a whisper in the grass, the serpent of the hill, the serpent of the sky, the serpent made of earth. The temple that vanished twice. Ronto. The sea has always spoken in whispers. Along the western coast of India, where the Arabian waters strike the rocks with a rhythm that seems older than language, there rises a temple whose story cannot be told in a straight line. The Somnath temple is not a monument fixed in time but a pulse, a cycle of loss and renewal, of vanishing and returning, of silence and song. To stand upon its grounds is to step into a place where centuries fold over one another like waves, where the boundary between ruin and glory is blurred, and where the stones themselves seem to breathe with memory. Imagine arriving as dawn stretches across the horizon. The sky slowly unveils streaks of saffron and rose, the sun rising from the sea as if emerging from a vast golden bowl. The tide washes gently over the rocks, each wave leaving behind a faint hiss, as if the ocean itself were sighing with ancient remembrance. Before you, the spire of Somnath pierces upward, carved with devotion, strong yet softened by wind and salt. The air is cool, brushed by ocean spray, yet heavy with incense that drifts from the inner sanctum. Already pilgrims begin to gather, some walking barefoot across the stone courtyard, their steps light but determined, some whispering prayers, others simply standing still, as if overwhelmed by the presence of the place. This temple has vanished, not once, but many times. The word vanished does not mean it disappeared quietly into air. It means it was ripped apart, shattered by fire and steel, plundered of its treasures, struck to rubble, and yet each time it returned. Its absence was temporary, its destruction never final. In the silence after each fall there came hands to rebuild, voices to chant, offerings to restore sanctity, artisans to carve, kings to sponsor, pilgrims to believe. It is this rhythm that defines Somnath, more than any jewel or idol, a rhythm of persistence. In its earliest days, legend places the temple within myth itself. It is counted among the 12 Jyotirlingas, the sacred abodes of Lord Shiva, where the god is believed not merely to be represented, but to dwell in luminous form. Ancient stories tell of the moon god, Chandra, who was freed from a curse through Shiva's grace here, lending the temple its name, Somnath, Lord of the Moon. One imagines the first devotees standing barefoot upon sand, raising their hands to the sky where the full moon glowed over the sea, offering milk and flowers, murmuring prayers into the wind. The temple then was not just stone but story, not just architecture but living presence. As centuries passed, the temple grew in grandeur. Its sanctum was said to glimmer with gold, its walls adorned with silver, its courtyards filled with the scent of sandalwood and ghee lamps burning steadily. Kings and merchants alike donated jewels and coins, turning Somnath into a treasury, as well as a shrine. It was not only the spiritual center of devotion, but also a beacon of wealth, drawing whispers across lands. The sound of its bells, some said, could be heard miles away, carried by the sea breeze. Pilgrims would walk for weeks, their feet cracked and dusty, just to step inside its sanctum and glimpse the Jyotirlinga shimmering in the lamplight. But wealth draws eyes, and eyes draw conquest. The first time Somnath vanished, it was torn apart by hands that sought gold more than God. Armies swept in, banners raised, swords unsheathed, their boots pounding against the stone courtyards. The air, once filled with chants and bells, erupted with the clash of steel and the cries of devotees. Idols were struck, treasures looted, sanctums defiled. When the dust settled, Somnath was no longer whole, its spire broken, its sanctum dark, its wealth scattered to foreign lands. What lingered was silence, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the endless rhythm of the sea. And yet, silence did not last. From the rubble rose determination. Devotees returned, their hearts unwilling to let the shrine remain in ruin. Stones were lifted, new walls raised, chants resumed. Artisans once again carved intricate designs into pillars, their chisels striking against stone like steady heartbeats. Kings and patrons poured resources into its revival. Slowly, the temple stood once more, gleaming, sanctified, whole. But the cycle repeated. Again the storm of conquest descended, again the walls fell, again the sanctum was plundered, and again hands rebuilt it. Over centuries, this happened not once or twice but many times. Some count 7 cycles of destruction and rebirth. Each invader believed they had silenced it forever. Each generation of devotees proved them wrong. The temple that vanished twice, thrice, and more, but never truly disappeared. Walk now through its corridors. The pillars are thick, carved with motifs of gods, flowers and patterns that spiral upward like prayers frozen in stone. Touch them and your fingers trace grooves left by artisans 1,000 years ago, as if you are in conversation with the dead. The sanctum glows with lamplight, the Jabur Turlinga bathed in offerings of milk and water. The air is thick with the mingled scents of incense, ghee, and salt carried in from the sea. You hear bells ringing, priests chanting in slow rhythm, each syllable resonating against the stone walls until it feels as if the building itself is reciting the mantra. Step outside again, and you find yourself facing the vast Arabian Sea. The horizon stretches endlessly, the waves breaking in eternal repetition. To the west, there is nothing but water until the shores of distant lands. Ancient legends claim that once, a pillar of light from the temple could be seen by sailors far across the sea, a beacon guiding them. Imagine standing there at sunset, the temple spire glowing gold in the last rays of light, while the sea turns crimson and the sky burns with fading fire. The sound of conch shells and bells rises behind you, merging with the roar of the ocean until it feels as though the world itself is singing. History speaks of Mahmud of Ghazni, who in the 11th century invaded the temple with brutal force, carrying away cartloads of gold and jewels, striking down the sacred idol. Chroniclers describe the devastation, the despair of devotees watching their holiest shrine defiled. And yet, even this did not end Somnath. In time, it was rebuilt. Later, other rulers followed, some destroying, some restoring, some altering. The temple became a mirror of history itself, scarred, repaired, scarred again. What makes Somnath extraordinary is not its architecture alone, but its refusal to remain broken. Imagine the artisans after each ruin, standing among rubble, lifting their chisels once more. Imagine the pilgrims, arriving to find their shrine destroyed, and yet returning year after year, until it stood again. Imagine the priests, carrying forward rituals even when the sanctum lay bare. Faith stitched the temple back together as surely as stone did. At night, the temple transforms. The spire glimmers under the silver glow of the moon. The lamps burn steadily, and chants continue in soft rhythm. Sit on the steps then, feeling the cool breeze, watching the waves shimmer under starlight. The sea speaks, the temple answers, and you are caught between two eternities, the eternity of nature and the eternity of devotion. It is easy then to believe that time does not move forward here, but in circles, just as Somnath has risen and fallen in cycles. Even now pilgrims come from across India and beyond. Some bring coconuts, some flowers, some coins, some nothing but their whispered prayers. They stand in line, waiting to step inside the sanctum, to bow their heads, to touch the cool stone, to feel a connection that stretches across centuries. Children run across the courtyard, their laughter mingling with the deep toll of bells. Priests pour libations over the lingam, their chants flowing steady as the tide. The sea roars behind, a constant reminder that change is inevitable, but so is return. Somnath is called the Shrine Eternal, for though it has vanished in form, it has never vanished in essence. Its walls have been struck, its idols broken, its wealth looted, its stones reduced to dust, and yet, each time, it has returned. This persistence is its greatest treasure, more precious than gold, more enduring than jewels. To stand here is to understand that destruction is never the end, but only another chapter in an endless cycle of renewal. As the night deepens, the stars scatter bright above the temple, the Milky Way arcing like a divine river across the sky. The waves crash steadily, the lamps flicker, the chants grow slower, softer, until they blend with the sea. You feel your breath slow, your thoughts quiet, as though you too have joined this rhythm of eternity. Somnath has vanished, but it has also returned. It will vanish again, perhaps, but it will also rise. It is not merely a temple, but a lesson whispered across centuries, that what is rooted in devotion cannot be erased. That faith, like the sea, returns again and again, no matter how many times the tide recedes. Somnath stands still. Somnath breathes still. Somnath endures. The head with wide eyes. Wine drifts across the barren plain of northern Syria, carrying with it the scent of dust and stone, the faintest whisper of time itself. Here, in the ruins of Tel Brak, the earth holds the memory of a city older than most others, a place that once swelled with people, rituals, and belief. Beneath the shifting sand and the broken layers of clay brick walls lies a mystery carved into countless fragments, the wide-eyed statues, strange and silent, watching with gazes that never close. These are not statues of kings or warriors, nor figures of gods with weapons and crowns. They are small, often simple, their faces reduced to one defining feature: eyes that dominate the head, open, unblinking, endless. And as you step into the realm of Tel Brak, you feel it, the sensation of being watched, not by people, but by stone, by figures who were buried thousands of years ago, yet whose gaze seems alive still. Tel Brak was no small village lost to time. It was a city, vast and sprawling, one of the earliest known in the world. Long before Babylon rose, before Ur and Uruk carved their places in Mesopotamia, Brock stood with its temples and its houses, with its workshops and its streets, where life moved in cycles of work, worship, and war. In its heart there was a temple, unlike any other, now known to us as the Eye Temple. Its walls, once painted and adorned, were thick with offerings, and those offerings took the form of these strange statues, heads with wide eyes, placed one after another until their presence filled the sacred chamber. Imagine stepping into that place in its time, lamps flickering, the scent of burning oils rising, priests chanting words that no one remembers today, and around you hundreds of faces watching, eyes wide, unyielding, reflecting the firelight as though alive. 1,000 gazes, human, and yet not human, all directed at the worshipper who dared enter. The sensation must have been overwhelming, both humbling and terrifying, as though one were standing before a god who saw everything. The statues themselves are curious things. Some are small enough to fit in your palm, while others rise taller, shaped from gypsum or alabaster, carved by hands that knew no iron tools, only copper, stone, and patience. Their bodies are reduced to the simplest forms, triangles for torsos, pillars for necks, sometimes just a head resting on a base. But the eyes, always the eyes, dominate the form. They bulge, they widen, they stare. Sometimes two, sometimes more than two, carved in rows or stacked upon one another, as if a single being could hold the sight of many, and perhaps that was the point. For to the people of Tel Brak, the eye was more than a feature, it was a symbol of the divine, the ever-watchful presence of gods or spirits who could see what mortals could not. To carve eyes into stone was to place eternity into matter, to ensure that someone, something was always watching. Archaeologists found them scattered, broken, buried in layers of time, hundreds of them unearthed from the temple's ruins, their gazes unblinking even after 4,000 or 5,000 years of darkness. Imagine the moment when the first of them was pulled from the soil. A hand brushes away dirt, a face emerges, its wide eyes staring back at the modern world with the same intensity it once turned toward ancient flames. The archaeologist holds it in the sunlight, and for a moment, time collapses. The carver's hand, the worshipper's offering, the priest's chant, all return in that gaze. The figure has been asleep for millennia, but it has never stopped watching. The desert itself seems to echo this feeling. Standing on the mound of Tel Brak today, the land stretches flat in every direction, broken only by the faint shimmer of heat. The ruins rise as irregular shapes, mud brick walls half dissolved, outlines of rooms fading into the earth. The silence is heavy, save for the wind that drags across the plain, lifting dust into the air. And yet, even in silence, there is presence. You walk among the ruins, and it feels as though countless eyes follow your every step, eyes that are not seen but are known, eyes that belong to the stones beneath your feet. The sensation is neither comfort nor fear, it is something between the two, a reminder that in this place, long ago, people believed that nothing could be hidden from sight. Who were these eyes for? Were they offerings to a god of vision, a deity whose power lay in seeing truth, in watching over all? Were they guardians placed in the temple to ensure purity of ritual, to protect from lies and deceit? Or were they symbols of the worshippers themselves, each eye representing a soul, an offering of devotion to be seen forever? No one knows. The tablets of Tel Brak remain silent. Its language, if it was written here, is lost. The people who filled the temple with statues have no names that we can call. All that remains is the gaze, endless, eternal, staring out across time without explanation. Consider how many eyes must have been gathered. Archaeologists speak of hundreds, but perhaps there were thousands once, lining walls, filling shelves, stacked in corners where priests and worshippers left them as gifts. To stand among them must have been to lose yourself in a sea of watching faces. Close your eyes, and you might imagine it, stepping into the Eye Temple as a common person of the city, carrying a small statue carved for you by a craftsman. You would hold it carefully, walk barefoot into the dimly lit chamber, hear the chanting echoing from the walls. Before you, the shelves are already crowded with countless eyes, layer upon layer, flickering in lamplight. You kneel, set your own offering among them, and for a moment, you become part of that eternal watchfulness. The god, whatever form it took, now has your sight as well, your devotion recorded, not in words but in stone. The meaning of the statues has been debated for decades. Some call them votive offerings, others see them as symbols of fertility or guardianship. But beyond the theories lies the undeniable strangeness of them. Human figures reduced to nothing but eyes. In our own time, eyes are still symbols of power, the all-seeing eye, the watchful gaze, the sense of being observed. Even now, when you see one of these statues, its simplicity gives way to something deeper. It stirs unease, fascination, wonder. It is as though the ancient people of Brak carved not faces, but the very concept of sight itself, distilled into its purest form. Tel Brak was vast, and it lived many lives. At its height, it was a hub of trade, of politics, of culture. Its streets bustled with farmers bringing grain, with artisans carving tools and figures, with traders carrying goods from distant lands. Its houses stood in rows, its walls rose to protect its people. Yet even as it thrived, it was a place of shadows, of rituals carried out in the dim chambers of its temples. The Eye Temple, with its countless statues, must have been one of its strangest and most powerful places, a sanctuary where mortals met the gaze of the divine. But time erodes all things. The city declined, was abandoned, was buried, its people faded, its gods forgotten, and the eyes were left to the dust, their meaning lost until our age uncovered them again. And so they return to us, not as answers, but as questions. You hold one in your hand, you see its wide eyes, and you wonder, what did they see? What did the people of Breck believe? What did they fear? What did they hope for, as they carved these offerings and left them in the temple? The eyes give no reply, they only stare, as they always have, unblinking, unchanging, eternal. As night falls over the plain, the ruins of Tel Brak fade into shadow. The stars above stretch endless across the desert sky, countless eyes of another kind, watching the world below. And there, among the stones, the ancient wide-eyed statues remain, their gaze as steady as the stars. They saw the rise of one of the world's first cities. They saw its fall. They saw the silence that followed. And now they see us too, standing centuries later, wondering at their purpose. The city is gone, its people are gone, but the eyes remain. The head with wide eyes still watches, and will watch, for as long as stone endures. The tomb that faces the stars. Beneath the clear skies of ancient Anatolia, where the Aegean waves rolled against the sunlit shores of what is now Turkey, there once stood a tomb so vast, so radiant, that its very presence was said to rival the stars. This was not merely a resting place for the dead, nor a structure to be forgotten beneath the sands of time. It was the mausoleum at Halicarnassus, the tomb of Mausolus, a satrap who ruled Caria under the shadow of Persia, and whose memory demanded a monument beyond comparison. For centuries it stood as one of the 7 wonders of the world, a mountain of marble rising from the earth, built by human hands yet shaped with the ambition of gods. And though it has long since crumbled, its legend remains, whispering of a tomb that gazed forever at the night sky, aligned as though even the stars themselves must bear witness to its grandeur. Imagine approaching Halicarnassus in the 4th century BCE. The air is warm, filled with the scent of olive groves and the salt of the sea. The harbor is alive with sails, ships carrying goods from every corner of the Aegean and beyond. Traders shout in Greek, in Persian, in tongues, carried from the Levant and the islands. The city is alive. But above all of it, something rises, a white glimmer on the hill, a structure that seems almost too perfect to be real. As you walk closer, you see it fully, tier upon tier of marble, columns rising like a forest of stone, sculptures lining the walls, and at the very top a chariot drawn by horses, carrying Mausolus himself, forever racing into the heavens. To see it must have been overwhelming. To stand before it must have felt like standing before eternity itself. The mausoleum was not born from ordinary grief. Mausolus was a ruler, yes, but he was also more than that. He was a man who reshaped his capital into a jewel of power and beauty, and when he died around 353 BCE, his wife Artemisia, who was also his sister, as was the Carian custom, was left with both sorrow and duty. She vowed that his memory would not fade, and so she called upon the greatest architects and sculptors of the Greek world, Pythios, Cedrus, Scopas, Bryaxis, Timotheus, and Leocharis, masters whose names themselves are like monuments carved into history. Together they created something unprecedented, not a temple, not a palace, not a fortress, but a tomb that was all of these things at once, a structure so magnificent that it became the very definition of the word mausoleum. Step closer in your mind and see the details. The mausoleum rose nearly 45 meters high, more than a dozen stories. Its base a solid rectangle of marble steps leading upward, like a pyramid reborn in Greek form. Around it stood Ionic columns, slender and tall, holding aloft a roof shaped like a stepped pyramid. Between the columns, the walls were alive with reliefs, battles of Greeks and Amazons, of centaurs and lapiths, carved with muscles straining, faces alive with motion, stone capturing the eternal struggle of man and beast, civilization and wildness. The sculptors who worked here were not ordinary artisans. They were the finest of their generation, each leaving behind fragments that we still marvel at today. Imagine the sunlight striking the marble, the shadows playing across the carved figures, making them seem to move, to fight, to breathe. The whole tomb must have seemed like a city in itself, a frozen world of myth and memory. And then, above all of this, the chariot. 4 horses carved in white marble, their hooves forever caught mid-stride, their manes alive with impossible detail, pulling a grand chariot in which Mausolus stood tall beside Artemisia. They gazed out over the city, over the harbor, over the sea, and beyond that, into the night sky. At sunset, the last rays of the sun would strike their faces, and at night, the stars would seem to crown their heads. It was a tomb that did not look downward into the earth, but upward, into the heavens, as if Mausolus himself had ascended, no longer bound by time. What did it mean to those who saw it? To the people of Halicarnassus, it was both pride and awe. Their ruler had become immortal, his tomb greater than any temple, greater even than the homes of the gods. To travelers, it was a marvel unlike any other. Merchants and sailors who docked in the harbor would speak of it in far-off lands. Pilgrims and poets would write of it, their words scattering the fame of the mausoleum across the world. It became a wonder, not because of its scale alone, but because it seemed to capture something deeper, the human desire to resist time, to resist forgetting, to build something so vast that even the stars must bend to its presence. And yet, even wonders crumble. For nearly 16 centuries, the mausoleum endured. It survived the conquest of Alexander the Great, the rise of Rome, the spread of Christianity, and the shifting sands of empire. But the earth itself does not bow to stone. Earthquakes shook the land in the Middle Ages, and the once mighty tomb began to break. Columns fell, sculptures shattered, the chariot toppled from its place among the stars. By the 15th century, when the Knights of St. John came to Halicarnassus, they found the ruins of the mausoleum and took much of its stone to build their fortress, the castle of St. Peter, which still stands today in Bodrum. The tomb that had once reached to the heavens was pulled back down into the earth, its fragments scattered across time, and yet it is not gone. Pieces of the mausoleum remain in the British Museum, friezes of horsemen, statues of lions, fragments of Mausolus and Artemisia themselves, their faces weathered yet still commanding. In Bodrum, beneath the modern city, the foundations of the mausoleum can still be seen, a ghostly outline of what once was. You can walk there today, stand on the stones, and imagine the walls rising, the columns stretching skyward, the horses rearing above. At night when the stars emerge, you might feel what the ancients felt, that the tomb still gazes upward, still faces the sky, still remembers. But the mausoleum is more than stone. It lives in the very word we use today. Every great tomb, every grand resting place, we call a mausoleum, its origin rooted in this single structure. Mausolus achieved what all rulers dreamed of, not just power and life, but immortality and memory. His name became the measure of all who came after. Close your eyes and linger in that world for a moment. Hear the chisels striking marble, the scaffolding creaking as workers climb to impossible heights. Smell the dust, the sweat, the mingled scents of the sea and stone. See Artemisia, wrapped in mourning robes, watching as her husband's tomb rises day by day, her grief turned into grandeur. Imagine the light of torches flickering across the finished monument, the night sky above filled with stars, the marble gleaming pale as bone. Imagine walking away, looking back one last time, and seeing Mausolus, forever in his chariot, watching the heavens. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus no longer stands, yet it has never truly vanished. Its stones have been broken, its sculptures scattered, but its memory endures, larger than the ruin, larger even than the wonder it once was. It is the tomb that faced the stars, the tomb that sought eternity, and though time claimed its walls, it did not claim its name. For even now, when we speak of mausoleums, we speak of Mausolus, we speak of Halicarnassus, we speak of a dream carved in marble and set against the heavens. And in that dream, beneath the constellations, the chariot still races, the horses still strain against the reins, and Mausolus still gazes outward, as though to say, even stone may fall, but memory endures forever. The temple that rose from the sea. Beneath the burning sun of Egypt, in the slow embrace of the Nile, there was once an island that seemed to drift between the realms of earth and water, a place where stone itself appeared to rise from the river's depths. This was Philae, the sacred island, home to the temple of Isis, the goddess of magic, healing, and eternal rebirth. To stand before it was to feel that you were not entirely in the mortal world, but somewhere between time and eternity, where the flowing of water met the unyielding strength of stone. For centuries pilgrims believed that here, on this island, the veil between the worlds was thinnest, that Isis herself walked in the corridors, her shadow brushing against the painted walls, her presence flickering in the flame of oil lamps. And though the Nile has shifted, and the temple has been lifted from its drowning place to stand again on higher ground, its story endures like the river itself, endless, shimmering, full of secrets. Imagine for a moment that you are sailing upriver in the time of the pharaohs. The Nile is wide, glistening in the light of dawn, its surface broken by the slow strokes of oars. On the banks you see palm groves swaying gently, fields of barley and emmer rippling in the wind, and small mud brick villages clustered along the fertile strip of earth. Beyond, the desert waits, endless and silent, its sands golden under the rising sun. But ahead, something glimmers that is not of field or desert. Rising from the waters, stone blocks stacked with precision, columns crowned with lotus and papyrus capitals, the shapes of gods and kings carved into the walls. The island of Philae lies before you, and the temple rises as if born of the river itself. You hear the sound of water lapping against its stone base, as though the Nile itself is offering prayers. You step ashore, and the air seems different here, as if charged with something unseen. The voices of priests chant in the distance, carrying hymns to Isis, and the faint aroma of incense drifts on the wind. The Temple of Philae was more than architecture. It was a statement of devotion, a poem in stone, dedicated to the goddess who embodied rebirth. Isis, sister and wife of Osiris, mother of Horus, the one who gathered the scattered pieces of her slain husband and breathed life into him once more. She was the healer of the sick, the protector of the dead, the magician whose power transcended all others. And so her temple rose, beginning in the time of the last native pharaohs and continuing under the rule of the Ptolemies, the Greek kings who made Egypt their home after Alexander's conquest. Even the Romans, conquerors of the known world, honored Isis here, adding their own inscriptions to her walls. For centuries, the island was alive with ritual. Pilgrims traveled from distant lands to stand within its colonnades, to pour water on its altars, to whisper their petitions into the stone. Step closer in your mind, and walk with me through its halls. The first sight is the grand courtyard, its open space ringed with massive columns, each carved with hieroglyphs and crowned with capitals shaped like lotus buds. The sun pours down, casting long shadows that move like silent sentinels across the flagstones. Beyond the courtyard lies the hypostyle hall, a forest of columns rising like trees turned to stone. Here the air is cooler, the light dimmer, and the silence deeper. Your footsteps echo softly as you move forward, your eyes adjusting to the flicker of torches. On the walls, painted reliefs show Isis with her wings outstretched, her face calm, her gaze eternal. You see Osiris, wrapped in his mummy cloths, rising again through her power. You see Horus, the falcon-headed sun, standing victorious, his gaze fierce and protective. Every inch of stone is alive with myth, every carving a whisper of a story told countless times before. Listen closer, and you can almost hear the rituals, priests chanting in tones low and resonant, their words carrying through the chambers like waves upon the river. The sound of water being poured from alabaster jars, the sweet smoke of incense curling upward to the roof beams. A procession of worshippers bearing offerings, bread, beer, flowers, fruit, each one placed at the feet of the goddess's statue deep within the sanctuary. And there she stands, Isis herself, not in flesh but in stone, her form cloaked in darkness, her presence felt rather than seen. The air in the sanctuary is heavy, thick with centuries of prayer, as though the walls themselves are saturated with belief. Yet this temple was not only for Egypt. The cult of Isis spread far beyond the Nile. Sailors carried her name across the Mediterranean, merchants brought her symbols into new cities, and worshippers in lands as distant as Rome, Greece, and Gaul raised altars in her honor. And yet here at Philae was her truest home, her beating heart, the place where her power was strongest. To stand on the island was to stand at the center of her worship, to feel that every river, every star, every prayer flowed back to this sacred space. But the Nile is not always gentle. With the rise and fall of its waters, Philae lived a life on the edge of drowning. For centuries the island endured, but in the modern age, with the construction of the Aswan Dam, the waters rose higher, and Philae was swallowed. The temple stood with water lapping at its base, flooding its halls, climbing its columns, until much of it lay beneath the surface. Fish swam where priests once chanted. The sanctuary was dark and drowned, the goddess herself submerged in silence. It seemed that the temple would vanish forever, lost beneath the waters, its stories erased. But like Isis, the goddess of rebirth, the temple did not accept death. In the 20th century, an unprecedented effort began. Engineers, archaeologists, and workers from across the world gathered to save it. Block by block, stone by stone, the temple was dismantled. Each piece was lifted from its watery grave, marked, and carried to higher ground, to the nearby island of Agilkia. There, painstakingly, it was rebuilt, as if raised from the Nile by the hands of men and the will of the goddess herself. When it was complete, the Temple of Philae stood once more, not on its original island, but reborn, as though it had itself lived through the myth of Osiris, death, dismemberment, and resurrection. Imagine what that means. The temple you see today, rising from Agilkia, is not a ruin, but a rebirth. The carvings still whisper, the columns still reach skyward, the sanctuary still breathes with silence. At night, when the stars shine above the Nile, and the waters glimmer in the moonlight, it is easy to forget that the temple was ever drowned. It stands as it always did, eternal, patient, a monument to the goddess who could not be forgotten. Close your eyes and linger there. Hear the lap of water against stone, a sound as old as time. Smell the faint trace of incense, as if the wind itself carries offerings. Feel the coolness of shadowed stone beneath your fingertips, the weight of history pressing against your skin. Walk slowly through the halls, your footsteps soft against the flagstones. Look upward, and see the stars framed by the tops of the columns, as though the temple itself is a gateway to the heavens. And in that moment, you understand why Philae was chosen. Because here, at the edge of the Nile, surrounded by water, the temple seems not of earth but of sky and sea, a place between worlds, forever rising, forever reborn. The Temple of Philae is more than architecture. It is a story carved in stone, a story of devotion and survival, of drowning and rising, of gods and men, and the river that binds them. It is the temple that rose from the sea, the temple that still rises, again and again, as long as the Nile flows, and the stars shine above Egypt. The city of painted walls. The houses stood pressed against one another, walls merging into walls, rooftops blending into a single surface beneath the Anatolian sun. No streets divided them, no open lanes cut between. Instead, people walked across the flat roofs, climbed down through openings into their homes, and lived within chambers that pulsed with color. Çatalhöyük was not a city of stone columns and marble temples. It was older than that, older than writing, older than kings. Here, in the heart of central Turkey, thousands of years before the pyramids, people built a world from mud brick and memory, a city that breathed with painted walls and buried ancestors, a city where life and death mingled in the same rooms, where every surface told a story and every wall shimmered with the touch of ochre and ash. Imagine entering one of these homes. You climb down through a hole in the roof, a ladder beneath your feet, the dimness of the interior wrapping around you. The air is cool, tinged with the smoke of hearth fires that have blackened the walls above. Light seeps faintly through the roof opening, a narrow shaft falling upon the hard-packed floor, and on the walls you see color. Reds, whites, blacks, painted shapes of leopards leaping, vultures stretching their wings, human figures dancing in patterns that seem to ripple with meaning. Some walls carry geometric patterns, repeating shapes, zigzags, lines that could be symbols or simply decoration. But in either case, they stir something deep inside. These are not idle decorations. They are memory, myth, ritual, paintings made to hold something of life against the endless silence of death. For beneath the floors, the dead slept. Generations of families lay buried beneath the very houses in which the living cooked, ate, and dreamed. Skeletons curled in graves, under platforms where children played, under hearths where fires burned, under beds where people slept. To live in Çatalhöyük was to live with the dead, to walk each day above your ancestors, to paint your walls while knowing bones rested just beneath the floor. Sometimes, skulls were taken from the graves, plastered and painted, as though given new life, a face reborn to gaze once more upon the living. The city was an endless dialogue between those who walked and those who had gone, and the painted walls were the language in which they spoke. Step outside, and you find no streets, no plazas, only more houses, fused together in an endless honeycomb of mud brick. To move through the city, you climb across roofs, leaping from one to another, ladders rising and descending like veins connecting the whole body. Each house is a cell, yet all together they form a single living organism, a city alive with breath and memory. Smoke rises from rooftop openings, curling into the blue sky. The distant mountains watch over the settlement, their peaks capped with snow even as the plain below grows with barley and wheat. Inside, daily life hums quietly. Women grind grain on stone querns, their hands moving rhythmically, dust rising to settle on painted walls. Men carve obsidian from the nearby volcanic hills, shaping blades sharp as a whisper, trading them across vast distances. Children play with clay figurines, small figures of women with wide hips, perhaps goddesses, perhaps mothers, perhaps both. In the corners, storage bins hold grain and nuts, the fruit of the fields and orchards. Firelight dances across painted leopards, their spots flickering as though alive. At night, when the flames burn low, shadows move across the walls, and the painted figures seem to stir, their forms shifting in the half-light as if the city itself dreams. The paintings are not random. Some show vultures with outstretched wings, looming above headless human figures. These may be visions of death, of bodies left exposed to the birds before burial. A sky burial painted eternal. Others show hunting scenes, deer and aurochs pursued by small human forms, arms raised with bows or spears. Some walls carry maps, or what appear to be maps. A cluster of shapes that some believe depict the very city itself. The houses laid out in their honeycomb form, with a great volcano rising in the background, its fiery peak erupting into the sky. If so, this may be the oldest map in the world, a city painting itself upon its walls, marking its place against mountain and earth. But perhaps most haunting of all are the leopards. They stride across the walls with power and elegance, their bodies curved, their spots carefully placed, their their forms alive with menace and grace. No one knows why they were painted here, again and again. Were they protectors of the house? Were they spirits of the wild? Or were they reminders of the thin line between life and death, predator and prey? In the flicker of torchlight, their eyes gleam, their bodies tense, as though ready to spring. The people of Catalhuyuk lived like this for centuries, building and rebuilding upon the same ground. When a house grew old, they filled it in, leveled it, and built anew upon its foundations. Layer after layer rose, until the mound itself became a testament to time, each stratum holding the traces of generations. Archaeologists peel back these layers now, finding beneath each wall another wall, beneath each floor another floor, beneath each life another death. The mound is a book written in mud and paint, and every page whispers of those who once lived and dreamed here. In summer the heat pressed down, and people worked in the fields, harvesting barley, tending sheep and goats, bringing food back into the city's heart. In winter they huddled inside their homes, firelight glowing from rooftop holes, smoke drifting like a veil across the settlement. Always the painted walls surrounded them, silent witnesses to their lives, eternal companions in their days and nights. Every birth, every death, every meal, every dream played out beneath the painted eyes of leopards and vultures, beneath the figures of ancestors frozen in red and black. And then, one day, it ended. Slowly, gradually, the city was abandoned. The people left, the walls crumbled, the roofs caved in, and the mound grew silent. Wind swept across the plain, dust covering the paintings, burying the bones, sealing the memories in layers of earth. For millennia the city slept, a mound upon the Anatolian plain, silent, forgotten. Until spades uncovered it once more, and the painted walls emerged from the soil, their colors still alive, their shapes still sharp, their stories still speaking. To stand there now, amid the excavation trenches, is to stand at the threshold of the earliest chapters of human city life. The houses rise again in fragments, walls of mud brick still pressed close, no streets between, only the sense of a vast hive of humanity. And on the walls, still faint, still enduring, the leopards, the vultures, the patterns of red and white. They are the oldest murals, the first art upon the walls of a city, the first attempt to fix memory and color against the passage of time. Catalhuyuk is not stone columns, not pyramids, not towering monuments. It is more intimate, more human, more haunting. A city where the living and the dead shared the same space, where every wall was a canvas, where memory itself was painted in ochre and lime. It is a city of painted walls, and though thousands of years have passed, its colors still speak, carrying us back to a time when cities were new, when life and death were inseparable, when every wall bore witness to the dreams of the people within. And in the silence of its ruins, if you close your eyes you can almost hear it, the grinding of grain, the laughter of children, the crackle of a fire, and the rustle of shadows moving across painted leopards, as if they still prowl, as if the walls themselves still dream. The stones that drew the sun. The great mound of stone rises from the earth of Menorca, its form unmistakable even after more than 3,000 years. At first glance it looks like a ship turned upside down, its prow pointing toward the sky, its ribs made of massive limestone blocks carefully fitted together. It is the Navetta des Tudons, the most famous megalith of the Balearic Islands, a construction older than Rome, older than Greece, older even than the stories that once explained its presence. It stands there still, in the quiet countryside, weathered by wind and sun, a monument of stone that seems less like something built by human hands and more like something that drew the sun itself to rise upon it. The name Navetta comes from the Menorcan word for little ship, and truly, this tomb resembles a vessel, as though it were built to carry souls not across seas, but across time and eternity. The stones are rough yet deliberate, laid without mortar, stacked in courses that rise higher and higher until they meet in a corbelled vault. No wheel or metal tool guided their placement, only human hands, levers, and endless patience. And yet the structure has endured for 30 centuries. Beneath the limestone sky, it stands as solid as the day it was sealed, its shape forever echoing the boats that once crossed the waters between islands. To walk toward it today is to feel time folding. The earth beneath your feet carries the scent of thyme and pine. Cicadas sing in the heat, the Mediterranean wind stirs the dry grass, and in the distance you hear the faint toll of a goat's bell. Then, in the middle of the field, the great stone ship rises, waiting. It seems at once familiar and alien, a presence from another age, older than memory. Archaeologists say it is a tomb, a collective burial chamber from the Bronze Age. And yet when you stand before it, you feel something deeper, something that resists neat explanation. Step closer, and you see the stones themselves, each massive block, cut and hauled into place by people with no metal chisels, no iron hammers, only stone tools and willpower. They dragged them across the earth, raised them upon one another, locking them together without mortar, the weight of each keeping the others firm. The lower stones are enormous, larger than a person, while the upper ones grow smaller as the walls curve inward. From afar the navetta seems simple, but up close it is intricate, a masterpiece of balance and proportion. The interior once held the dead men, women and children, their bones arranged within the long chamber, their spirits sealed inside the stone ship. Excavations revealed human remains mingled with grave goods, bronze bracelets, bone buttons, beads of shell. These were offerings, tokens for the journey beyond. Reminders that even in death, the dead were not alone. More than 100 individuals were laid here across centuries, their bodies resting together in the dark, as if sailing forever in the belly of the stone vessel. Imagine that chamber when it was full, the flicker of torchlight revealing walls of rough stone, the scent of smoke and resin, the silence broken only by whispered prayers. Outside, families gathered to mourn, to honor, to speak to their dead. The entrance was sealed, opened again only when another body joined the voyage. Over time, the tomb became not just a place of death, but a memory vessel, holding generation after generation, binding the living to the ancestors who shaped their world. The orientation of the navetta is no accident. Its long axis points toward the sun, aligned so that light touches it in a rhythm that must have mattered to those who built it. Some believe it was meant to face the setting sun, the path of death, the horizon where day ends. Others think it marked celestial cycles. A tomb that was also a calendar, the stones not only carrying the dead, but drawing the sun itself into their design. On certain days, the light falls in ways that seem intentional, illuminating the entrance, marking time through shadow and glow. The builders were not ignorant masons. They were astronomers of stone, weaving the heavens into the earth. Stand near it in the early morning, and you see the first rays of light strike its curved side, washing the limestone in gold. At dusk, shadows stretch long, the ship sinking once more into darkness. Day after day, century after century, the sun has risen and set against its stones, and still the navetta endures. In its silence, it has witnessed thousands of years of sunrise, each one burning briefly across its surface, then vanishing into night. But the navetta was never only a tomb. For the people of Minorca, these megaliths were also sacred markers, nodes in a landscape filled with stone sanctuaries, talas, and talayots. Together they form a world of ritual architecture, unique to these islands, a world where stone was more than building material, it was the medium of eternity. The navetta is the oldest of them, the ancestor of monuments, a vessel that sailed first into time, leaving behind its wake in the form of other sacred stones. Close your eyes and imagine the Bronze Age people who built it. Their world was smaller than ours, but no less immense in meaning. They lived in stone villages, tended sheep and goats, fished in the blue waters of the Mediterranean. At night they looked to the same stars we see, their constellations burning bright, their paths across the sky eternal. In those stars they saw journeys, spirits, stories. When someone died, they carried the body to the navetta, laid it with care among those who had gone before, and sealed the entrance with stone. In that act they placed their loved one, not just in the earth but into the flow of sun and sky, into a ship forever sailing between light and darkness. Even now, after millennia, the navetta speaks, not in words but in presence. Its stones breathe the weight of time. Touch them and you feel the roughness of limestone, worn by wind but still strong. Stand in its shadow and you feel the coolness of eternity. The air hums with cicadas, the grass bends in the breeze, and the stone ship endures, as though waiting for its next voyage. The navetta des Tudons is more than an artifact. It is a memory of when people first sought to bind death with permanence, when they turned stone into a vessel for the soul, when they built something not for a season but for ages. It is a ship that never sailed the sea, and yet it carries the dead across an ocean, vaster than water, across time itself. And as the sun rises once more above Minorca, the light catches its stones again, just as it has for 30 centuries, and you realize the stones did not just endure the sun, they drew it, held it, and made it part of their eternal voyage. The city of the living may fall, the voices of the mourners may fade, but the navetta remains, steady as the sun, ancient as the horizon. It waits in silence, its prow forever pointing skyward, a ship made not of wood and sail, but of stone and memory, carrying the eternal voyage of those who once lay within. The tower that measured the moon. The tower rises quietly above the Yucatan plain, a circular form of stone, half crumbled, half intact, and yet still unmistakably a sentinel of the sky. This is Archaeological, the great observatory of Chichen Itza, built by the Maya to measure not only the stars and the sun, but the restless wandering light of the moon. From a distance it looks like a broken snail shell, coiled and ancient, and perhaps that is why its name, Archaeological, the snail endures. Its spiral staircase, once whole, twisted upward through shadow, carrying priests and skywatchers into the dome above, where narrow windows carved in stone aligned with heavens that still shine today. The tower is no ordinary ruin, it is a clock a calendar, a temple, and a memory all at once. It was built to measure time itself, and though centuries of wind and rain have worn it down, it still whispers of the moon's slow dance across the sky. Walk toward it in the present, through the dense heat of the Yucatan, where cicadas drone and iguanas scatter across the stones. The air smells faintly of earth and distant rain. Around you rise the grand monuments of Chichen Itza, the Great Pyramid of Kukulkan, the Temple of the Warriors, the ball courts where echoes carry forever. But El Caracol stands apart. It is round in a city of squares, curved in a world of edges, and its purpose is written not in carvings of gods or warriors, but in the very movement of the heavens above. To stand before it is to sense a different kind of temple, not one of offerings and sacrifice alone, but one of watching, of waiting, of listening to the stars. Its spiral interior rises slowly, deliberately, like the curve of a shell. Those who climbed it long ago carried torches, their flames flickering against the limestone walls as the priests ascended into darkness. At the summit, narrow slits in the stone open to the sky, perfectly angled to frame the horizon, to catch the rising of Venus, the setting of the sun, the long cycle of the moon as it waxed and waned. It was here, perhaps, that the Maya perfected their calendars, aligning ritual to the stars, planting to the solstices, sacrifice to celestial rhythm. For the Maya did not see the heavens as silent. The sky was alive, filled with gods, serpents, jaguars, and heroes. The sun was a divine traveler, the moon a goddess, weaving through darkness, Venus a warrior who heralded destruction. To measure these beings was not simply science, it was survival. To mistake the calendar was to risk famine, to dishonor the gods, to step out of rhythm with the cosmos. And so El Caracol rose, a great stone shell to capture the sky, a place where observation was prayer and calculation was offering. Imagine the night in which it was alive. The jungle hushes as torches are extinguished. The tower breathes with silence. Priests climb the spiral with bundles of copal incense, their footsteps echoing in the stone coil. They emerge beneath the dome, lift their eyes, and through the narrow windows the heavens unfold. The stars burn white above the jungle canopy. The moon hangs heavy in silver, and Venus glitters like a jewel. The priests chant softly, not to be heard by men, but by gods, as they trace the moon's path, mark its disappearance, each return, each cycle noted, each rhythm memorized, until the very sky seems to speak. The moon mattered deeply here. In Maya thought she was Ixchel, goddess of water, weaving, childbirth and medicine, a force as nurturing as she was dangerous. Her phases were watched for planting, for ritual, for bloodletting ceremonies that honored her cycles. At El Caracol, the moon was not just admired, it was measured, mapped, and bound into the calendar that structured life itself. The tower became the heart of a living clock, its windows like gears turning with celestial order. And then, with patient precision, the Maya extended their gaze beyond the moon. They tracked Venus, whose rising often heralded war. They followed the equinoxes, when day and night balanced perfectly. They observed the solstices, when the sun reached its longest path. All of these alignments could be marked from El Caracol, each opening in the stone catching some vital celestial event. It was not only a tower, it was a mechanism, a cosmic instrument carved from limestone and faith. Centuries passed. The people who once lit its torches left, their cities swallowed by jungle. The tower crumbled slowly, its dome collapsing, its stairways broken, until only the shell remained. The jungle wrapped around it, vines clawing at the stones, animals nesting in its crevices. The heavens continued their cycles, but no one marked them from within the stone snail. Time flowed on, and El Caracol sank into silence. When explorers rediscovered it centuries later, they saw only a ruin, curious in its roundness, unlike the other temples. Archaeologists studied it, measured its angles, realized its alignments. They understood that this was no ordinary shrine, but a place where the heavens themselves had been charted. And yet, even with modern science, there remains mystery. Which alignments were most important? How exactly were the windows used? Did priests stand within or outside, marking the horizon? The answers are uncertain. The tower does not reveal everything. It only waits, as it always has, for the sky to tell its secrets. Stand within its ruins today, and you feel the air move softly through its cracks. The spiral still curves upward, though broken. The windows still frame the horizon, though partially fallen. If you visit on the right night, you can still see the moon shining through the openings, its light falling across ancient stone. For a moment, time collapses, and you could be a priest again, torch in hand, waiting for the goddess of the moon to rise. The Maya understood time differently from us. To them, it was cyclical, endless, spiraling like the stairs of El Caracol. Life, death, and rebirth were not lines, but circles, returning again and again. The moon's cycle mirrored this truth, waxing, waning, disappearing, and returning. The observatory was more than a scientific tool, it was a symbol of that cycle, a stone embodiment of time's endless spiral. Even in ruin, it teaches the same lesson: nothing truly ends. The moon vanishes, but she returns. The tower crumbles, but it still stands. The city falls silent, but its stones still breathe. Walk away slowly and glance back at the tower. Against the sky, its broken dome leans like a head listening to the heavens. It has measured not only the moon, but centuries themselves, keeping time long after its builders vanished. It is a ruin, yes, but also a witness, a reminder that even when we are gone, the stars will continue to turn, and perhaps some stone, somewhere, will still be watching. Archaeological, the snail, the tower that measured the moon, remains a quiet shell of time. Its spiral calls us upward, into darkness, into silence, into the endless sky. It asks nothing but that we listen, and when we do, we hear what the Maya heard, the rhythm of the cosmos, eternal, unbroken, forever spiraling on. The Cave of Forgotten Music. Deep in the Slovenian hills, where limestone ridges fold into valleys and rivers carve through ancient stone, there lies a cave that has carried the whispers of millennia. The air is damp, carrying the faint mineral tang of rock and the smell of soil that has lain undisturbed for thousands of years. Inside, the silence presses close, broken only by the dripping of water, a steady heartbeat that seems older than time. The cave walls glisten with moisture, their pale surfaces shining faintly where light touches them, and shadows stretch into hidden recesses that seem to lead into endless darkness. It was here, in this place called defy, that the earth held a secret, buried beneath layers of sediment. A bone, at first glance unremarkable, lay quiet in the soil, yet in its hollow length were holes, perfectly placed, aligned as if by intention. It was not simply bone, it was music, waiting, music older than writing, older than cities, perhaps older than human memory itself. It is known as the defy flute, a relic so ancient that its sound may have been the first melody ever shaped by human breath. The cave feels alive with the thought. Imagine stepping inside long ago, not as a visitor from the modern world, but as one of the people who first came here in the Ice Age. Outside, snow covers the hills, the wind bites cold, and the nights are long. But in the cave there is shelter, fire, and community. The flicker of flames paints the walls in trembling gold, shadows dance across rock, and voices murmur in low guttural tones. Children huddle close to warmth, hunters rest their weary bodies, and in the stillness between words, someone lifts the bone flute. A breath moves through it, and sound emerges, thin at first, wavering, but unmistakably music. A tone rises in the darkness, echoing against the cave walls, blending with the sound of dripping water and the crackle of fire. For the first time, perhaps, the night holds not only silence or voice, but song. The tones shift, rising, falling, uncertain but alive. They carry across the chamber, and those gathered listen with wide eyes. The bone has become more than bone. It is a vessel for something unseen, something that stirs emotion in ways words cannot. In that moment, music is born. The flute itself is small, made from the femur of a cave bear. Its surface is worn by age, its holes aligned as though placed with purpose. Scientists debate whether it was carved by human hands or marked by the teeth of an animal. Yet when one holds it, when one aligns it with the lips and breathes, the tones that emerge cannot be mistaken. They are not random, they are notes. They are the first traces of melody, shaped in a world that knew only rhythm, the heartbeat, the footsteps, the crack of wood and fire. With this flute, sound became art. The people who lived here were Neanderthals, long portrayed as silent, brutish, without the subtlety of thought that defines humanity. But the flute whispers otherwise. It suggests that these people understood more than survival. They understood beauty. They felt the stirrings of something beyond hunger and fear. They shaped sound because sound could move them, could lift them from silence, could carry memory and meaning in ways stone tools could not. The flute is not only a relic of music, it is a challenge to the story of what it means to be human. The cave itself holds the memory. Step deeper, and you feel the weight of time pressing closer. The walls seem to lean inward, as though listening. Drips echo in rhythms, and if you pause, you might almost imagine them as accompaniment. The ground beneath is uneven, layered with sediments that carry the bones of animals long gone, the ashes of fires long extinguished, the remains of meals eaten in flickering torchlight, and somewhere among them, once hidden, was the flute, cradled by earth for 40,000 years. Picture the hand that once held it, thick fingers strong from shaping stone and skinning animals, wrapping around the smooth surface of bone, a thumb resting against it, lips pressed to its hollow, breath warm against the cold cave air. The sound that followed was not just noise, it was intention, it was control. It was the recognition that sound could be shaped, repeated, and remembered. A phrase of notes, passed from breath to breath, became more than one person's song. It became the voice of a people, the voice of a moment in time. Outside the cave, the landscape stretched wild. Herds of reindeer moved across frozen plains, mammoths grazed on tundra grasses, and saber-toothed cats prowled the edges of shadow. Life was precarious, bound to the rhythm of hunt and season. But inside the cave, music gave pause. It lifted existence from survival into meaning. Each tone shimmered like firelight. Each melody lingered like smoke in the air. The flute became part of ritual, of gathering, of memory. When a child was born, perhaps a tune was played. When a hunter died, perhaps another melody rose to mark their passing. The notes were fragile, fleeting, but in their echo, something eternal stirred. The Divj Babe flute is often called the oldest instrument in the world. Whether it was made by deliberate hand or chance, its very possibility reshapes history. To think of Neanderthals not only speaking, but singing, not only surviving, but creating, shifts our understanding of the past. The cave is no longer just a shelter, it is a concert hall, a chamber where echoes carried human breath into eternity. Sit in the darkness now, in imagination, with the fire gone and only silence pressing close. The cave holds its breath, then faintly, a note rises again. It is thin, trembling, like the call of some distant bird. Another follows, and then another. The sound weaves into pattern, not perfect, but intentional. And in that fragile melody, time collapses. You are no longer in the present. You are seated among ancestors, listening as the first music touches the human heart. The flute's tones are haunting, not because they are primitive, but because they are familiar. They remind us that across 40,000 years, our ears still hear in the same way, our hearts still move to melody, our spirits still quiet in the presence of song. The Neanderthal who played the flute felt what we feel, the ache of longing, the joy of rhythm, the hush of wonder. Music binds us not only across space but across ages, a thread running unbroken from that cave to every song ever sung since. Archaeologists who studied the flute debate its origin, but many who hear it played do not doubt. They recognize in its sound the unmistakable signature of music. Modern musicians have reconstructed it, shaping replicas from bone, blowing across its hollow, coaxing melodies into life once more. The notes rise in modern air, but they carry the weight of ancient breath. They are simple, fragile, and yet they move listeners to silence, to awe, to tears. It is not perfection that matters, it is connection. The flute connects us to those who came before, to those who first realized that sound could lift the spirit. In the cave of Divj Babe, the past lingers. Water still drips, shadows still stretch, silence still breathes. The flute is gone now, carried to museums, studied under light, replicated and debated. But in the cave itself you can still feel it. You can close your eyes, breathe deep, and almost hear the thin, wavering tones rising once more. Music does not need instruments to survive. It survives in memory, in imagination, in the hum of wind against stone. The flute may be ancient, but the music it represents is eternal. The cave of forgotten music has not forgotten. It waits in silence, ready for those who listen, ready to whisper again of the first song that carried across its stone walls, the first melody to rise from breath into eternity. The Divj Babe flute is more than an artifact. It is the voice of a world long gone, carried across time in fragile tones that still echo if you pause, if you listen, if you breathe. The cave sits quietly, its entrance weathered by millennia of rain and wind, a mouth in the limestone that has seen seasons fold into each other endlessly. In the silence, one can imagine not only the hunters who crouched within its shadow, but also the echoes of something older still, a tune, perhaps, whispered across tens of thousands of years. The Divj Babe flute, found in these very depths, remains one of the most haunting artifacts of prehistory. A hollow bone, punctured with deliberate holes, an object that defies the line between survival and something deeper, the yearning for beauty, for sound, for meaning. The fragment itself, shaped from the femur of a young cave bear, carries marks that some argue are accidental, the result of animal teeth rather than human intent. Yet when held up to the light, when measured and tested, the spacing of the perforations hints at intention, not accident. And intention means hands. It means thought. It means music. Imagine then a world so long ago that the glaciers reached down across Europe, pressing cold into valleys, forcing small bands of humans and their kin to huddle near rivers and caves for shelter. In such a world, survival was harsh. But even here, especially here, someone took time to craft sound. The cave where the flute was found is nestled above the Idrika River in western Slovenia. The river winds like a silver thread through steep valleys, its waters fed by snowmelt and springs, carving through rock long before humans first stood on its banks. When archaeologists began their careful digs, they did not expect music. They expected tools, fire remains, bones of prey, and they found these, thousands upon thousands. But among the fragments, one piece of bone seemed different. Its surface bore punctures. Its ends, though broken, showed smoothing, shaping. It demanded attention. Slowly it dawned on the excavators that what they held might be the oldest instrument ever made. Think of the hands that carved it, steady under firelight. Picture the flicker of flame across a small community gathered in the mouth of the cave, the scent of roasting meat mingling with pine smoke, the wind pushing in the sound of the river below. Someone, perhaps with a shard of stone sharpened against harder rock, pressed into bone, hollowing, puncturing, crafting. It was not quick work. It required care, and when it was done, the maker lifted it to their lips and blew. Perhaps it sounded rough at first, a whistle, a hiss. But with adjustment, with practice, notes emerged. Notes that could rise and fall, notes that could be arranged. Music, in its most ancient form, archaeologists debate still. Was it truly a flute? Could the holes not simply be the punctures of scavengers, the gnawing teeth of hyenas that dragged bones into caves? The debate stretches across decades, with scholars examining under microscopes, comparing marks to carnivore bites, measuring hole spacing with instruments, even attempting reconstructions. Some reconstructions produce sound, real sound, scales that echo eerily in museum halls. Others insist it is coincidence that humans of this age had no such capacity for music. Yet listen closely, and the counter-arguments begin to fade, drowned beneath the very human impulse to find rhythm and breath and pattern in sound. In the cave, sound would have traveled differently than in open air. The limestone walls curved inward, carrying echoes in strange directions. A note blown on the flute could ripple, return, magnify. Imagine children hearing it for the first time, their eyes wide, their voices laughing as they try to mimic the sound. Imagine elders nodding, recognizing in the music something sacred, something reaching beyond hunger or shelter. Perhaps the flute was played at night, when darkness pressed heavy on the land, to comfort those huddled together against the chill. Perhaps it was played during hunts, as signal or encouragement. Perhaps it was played during rituals we can no longer name. Rituals lost like smoke into air. The Divi Babe flute forces us to imagine Neanderthals, not as brutish, wordless beings but as people with thought, creativity, memory. For it was Neanderthals, most likely, who lived here at the time the flute was made, around 50,000 years ago, long before modern humans spread fully across Europe. The notion unsettled early scholars, who preferred to see music as uniquely Homo sapiens, a mark of culture beyond mere survival. To grant Neanderthals music was to grant them imagination, and imagination is uncomfortably close to humanity itself. Yet excavation after excavation shows complexity, burials with care, pigments with purpose, ornaments crafted from shells. Why not music? Why not a flute, bone against lips, air carried through holes? Consider the cave bear from whose bone the instrument was fashioned. These massive creatures roamed Ice Age Europe in vast numbers, their hulking forms feared and revered. To carve an instrument from the femur of such an animal may have been more than convenience, it may have been symbolic. The bear was powerful, a creature that embodied strength, hibernation, death, and rebirth. To transform its bone into sound might have been a way to call upon its spirit, to channel something larger than life itself. Sound, after all, carries invisibly. It moves from the unseen into the ear, intangible yet real. What better way to honor a beast than to let its body sing? And so, within the cave, music was born, or reborn, for perhaps earlier flutes existed, carved from reeds or wood that vanished into the soil long ago. This one survived only because it was bone, strong enough to resist the press of time, buried deep in sediment until careful hands uncovered it again. We cannot hear its original voice exactly as it was, yet reconstructions offer a glimpse, notes that rise and fall in ways that stir something primal, something both foreign and familiar. Listeners today describe it as haunting, as though the cave itself breathes through the bone. In concert halls, replicas have been played, producing melodies that carry across modern ears and yet feel ancient, timeless. The Divi Babe flute changes how we think of time. 50,000 years is almost incomprehensible, a stretch so vast that empires, kingdoms, even entire civilizations vanish into dust within a blink by comparison. Yet across that gulf, sound connects us. A note blown then is a note that could be blown now, vibrating the same way, resonating in the same air. Across the silence of millennia, it is as though someone whispers to us still, reminding us that they too were human, or near human, close enough to sing. But the story of the flute is not only about sound, it is about what sound means. To make music is to pause from necessity, it is to breathe deliberately, to arrange, to play. It suggests community. For music without audience is rare, it suggests time enough to experiment, to create. And so in the cold heart of the Ice Age, there was not only fear, hunger and firelight, there was also music, rising through caves, carried into valleys, drifting toward stars. Imagine that night again, more deeply this time. The fire is low. Sparks rise into smoke that curls into the dark roof above. Shadows of hunters and gatherers shift across the stone walls, mingling with carvings of scratches and marks left by generations before. A figure lifts the flute, they breathe. A note emerges, thin at first, then fuller, filling the cave. Others sit in silence, listening. Some sway slightly, as if memory itself moves them. Children smile, perhaps clap. An elder closes their eyes, remembering. Outside, the river runs on, constant, but within the cave, for a moment, time pauses. Only the sound remains. And what songs did they play? We cannot know. Perhaps they mimicked birds, their whistles echoing into night. Perhaps they played simple scales, repeating patterns that soothed. Perhaps they found rhythms, tapping bone against stone, blending breath with percussion. It may not have been music as we define it today, but it was music all the same, organized sound, shaped with purpose, offered to ears willing to hear. And in that act, humanity, or something close to it, revealed itself. The Divjay Babe flute sits now in a museum case, lit softly, guarded carefully, a fragment of bone that has outlasted all memory of those who played it. Visitors lean close, peering at the holes, reading plaques that describe the debates. Children press faces to the glass, imagining. Musicians pause, wondering what melodies they might draw if allowed to touch lips to the bone. Scholars argue still, some resistant, others insistent. But in the hush of the gallery, when no one speaks, the flute seems almost to hum, as though its story continues even in silence. For music, once born, never fully dies. It echoes through us, through our species, through our longing to connect across distance, across time. The Divjay Babe flute is not only a relic, it is a bridge. It tells us that 50,000 years ago, in a cave above a river, someone paused, breathed, and played. And the sound they made, however faint, carries still, through us, through memory, through the cave of forgotten music that is the human soul. And so another mystery fades back into the silence of time. But countless more still wait to be uncovered. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to our channel, give this video a like, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Until the next story drifts your way, rest well and keep listening to the whispers of the past.